truth. It was the time change on Saturday.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the European, what is it, fall back, the European time change happened over this weekend. And I think that we forgot to figure it in, or Bob forgot to figure it in. I'm not sure which one, but the bottom line is that Bob won't be here for an hour. So we have some time to kill. And here's where we find out how spiritual everyone in the chat room really is. Jay Campbell's spiritual, and he's here tonight right on time. I haven't heard him complain yet.
Not yet. I'm on a new path, Jeffrey. I'm not complaining. It's all
that's right. You're on the Matt Ferry positivity train.
That's right, man. 100%. Got me.
So, Jay, be honest with us. How's that been going since you got back from the seminar? Have you kicked the dog or cussed and yelled and screamed yet? Has anybody cut you off in traffic? Did they get half a peace sign?
I quite honestly, I have not had any craziness. I did have, as you know, I got pulled over in a secondary.
Oh, that's right.
Being the Canadian border yesterday, but I was completely calm and mellow. I did not freak out. I sat there and pulled out my David Hawkins book. No, I mean, quite honestly, man, I'm nothing yet. I mean, I've had some bad stuff happen to me for sure, but I've been just, remaining calm.
Jay, good question that just flashed by. Do we know what dimension the Great White Brotherhood are from?
No, that's a question I think that is asked, so we'll find out.
Travis Walton. I wasn't talking to Travis Walton. I have, but I wasn't just now. He's the guy from Fire in the Sky. But I was talking to Travis Thorpe, who is a Triskelion Wiccan priest. And in his tradition, and also in, I believe, Masonic tradition, they talk about some people that were called the Great White Brotherhood. They came here to teach humanity. They've gone back into the shadows, so to speak, and enlighten humanity once they leave this earth, have the opportunity to join the Brotherhood. So we may, in fact, be talking to the same type of folks.
I mean, that's what I believe. I mean, again, if you go to thegreatwhitebrotherhood.org and you don't read the Wikipedia entry and you don't read greatwhitebrotherhood.com and you don't read all the other stuff that you find, and again, let's be really honest, guys. Anything that's in the mainstream, i.e. Wikipedia, Snopes, any of those things are bogus. They're controlled by the cabal completely. They have been for so many years. And it's like people that rely on that for intel, like you're going to get like woke information. I mean, come on. Of course, it's not going to be legit. Truth with error. They're going to put stuff in there that's going to resonate, and then you're going to probably get something that's just going to be a break in the code, and it's not going to resonate if you're truly on the path. So you just have to recognize that.
Jay, here's a question for you. Joyce Believes says, "I'm new here. Where exactly am I?"
You are on the path to a greater awareness, Joyce. As long as you keep coming back every Monday night and you listen to me and Jeff and our fine guests, you will be experiencing a complete shift in everything you think you know.
Absolutely. If you've stumbled in here not knowing where you are or what this is, you have walked into a red hot, unindoctrinating, self-creating, enlightening, straight and narrow path, more abundant life, let's get busy cousin kind of place, and your life will never be the same. And don't think for a minute that you're here by some sort of accident. If it is an accident, it's a cosmic accident, and you're supposed to be here, and you're probably a cosmic cousin. If you don't know what that means, just keep listening. And some guy named Global Witness says, "I've stumbled in here. Who are you?" Do you think the 144,000 are in the chat, Jay?
There are 400 people in here. So guys, if you just logged in to see this, unfortunately, and I definitely will take the blame for it because I had it happen earlier today with another person overseas, but I guess the Europeans changed. They fell back. And so the time difference shifted. So Bob is at his normal time, which is 7 o'clock, but it's actually 8 o'clock for us because we didn't move. So he didn't do anything wrong. He got the time right, but we did not realize that there was a time shift in Europe, which again, as I tell Jeff, before we figured that out, it just proves that we're living in the matrix, folks, because if Europe can change the time, but we can't, then what time is it?
What time is it? And what is time? And this is the reason why, Jay, I don't know why you do what you do. I know why you sell real estate, because you make a lot of money. You're good at it. But I know why I do what I'm doing here. It's because of things like this. Dory Gray says, my life has transformed overnight. No joke.
That's awesome, man. Well, I mean, again, we both know that we get tons of emails, tons of messages, you know, from all comms, from a lot of people who watch the show, a ton of people that come from Twitter, a ton of people that come from the Decoders of Truth and on Facebook. You know, this resonates with them, and sharing this kind of information when your soul is open to receiving it. And obviously we talk all the time, Jeffrey, on how that happens, you know, it makes a huge difference. You start following along, you start like becoming more interested in this. It's just important. And Jeff and I say this every show. Oh, by the way, full announcement. The great folks at Focus Life Force Energy have an 850 level of consciousness beam at us right now. So remember, here's the level of consciousness scale on the wall over here. So 850 actually correlates to enlightenment. 700 to 1000 is enlightenment. So not going to lie, I am sweating profusely right now. And my room is 72-degree, air conditioned, cold. I never sweat. I told Jeff, I know when I feel it because the energy in my body is like, you can feel the cellular energy from the higher consciousness level. So props to those guys, Clayton Stedman and Jeff, the owners of Focus Life Force Energy, and also Shekinah, who's been kind enough to get those guys. I know that they follow Jeff and I, they watch the show. So we much love to you guys, man. Mad props and gratitude for you guys for doing this. And obviously all of you guys are benefiting too. Because right, Jeff, because when it's on and you're watching the video, you do feel a higher level of consciousness. It's kind of a drop down or bend around effect. So everybody is feeling that. So props to those guys.
Absolutely. And you're probably asking, you know, some of you are feeling it and you're wondering what you're feeling. You know, what you are feeling is the 850 range field of enlightenment, as Jay just talked about. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, dadgummit, I just put the wrong thing into the chat room. I'm going to put the fluffy link in here. So if you want to get a free trial, you can get 15 days on your house. You can get 15 days on your cell phone as well.
You guys, Jeff and I have had Fluffy for almost 8 months now. And the change for both of us in consciousness and awareness has just been phenomenal. You know, we talk about all the time, my animals are different. You know, this is like, this is not something that Jeff and I are promoting because we get referral kickbacks. I mean, we promote this because it works. We believe in it. We use it. It's on my cell phone, my wife's cell phone. It's on our landline. And then I figure we have something else. I can't remember where it is. Oh, my daughter's cell phones. It's on theirs too. So we have it like on every line in our house. And ever since I put it in, man, all I can say is really good things about it. It's amazing. And most of the people we know too that we've recommended, Jeff, Tony is one. People in our network are all using it.
Absolutely. And it is absolutely profound. And I just put a link in the chat room. It's this for a channel named Cookie Doo, and we're supporting the up and coming YouTubers. This is a 12-year-old guy with a lot of talent. And I want you to do a personal favor for me and go subscribe to his channel. And Jama asked, what is Fluffy for those that are unaware? I think Jay just answered it. What it does is it beams a high consciousness field to your cell phone. And I think I don't know how many meters around your cell phone, but it's a lot. And let me speak about that as soon as I get finished. They can also put it on your home. And they've created a special thing for Jay and I, because we're doing a lot of work for them, where they are giving us an 850 zone in our house. And guess what? Right here in the NCK bunker.
I'm feeling it, man. My body is
bunker is 850, baby.
And right now, by the way, just as you said that, Jeff just sent me an email that one of the owners, Jeff Stegman, it says, Jay, it is now on. The FLFE zone is created when you first spoke on the Zoom call, and it will end when the call is over. Everyone listening and watching will have a zone 5 feet around them for the call and while listening to the recording afterwards. Extremely exciting. So guys, when you're watching the recording,
Jay Campbell, I've just been handed a special notice. From Paul Sanders. And guess what? Bob Sanders is in the house. So we need to go ahead and get Bob Sanders in here.
Awesome.
Why can't, here we go. Paul Sanders is the name it comes under. Let's go ahead and see if we can't. Now, Bob, when I bring you on, you will be live. So keep that in mind. Folks, the moment that you've been waiting for is here.
There he is, Bob. How are you, brother?
Fine, thanks. And yes, I am alive.
Bob, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. I think you already know, Jay.
Yeah.
And sir, let us just say this at the beginning. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here with us. We've been waiting, so many weeks with my situation from YouTube. I want to thank you so much for your graciousness and for your patience. You're a fine gentleman, and it's our privilege to have you here with us. And I'm not going to be looking at the chat room anymore while we're talking with Bob, and we will be back with the chat room after we spend some time with Bob, and Bob goes over our questions. Bob, what would you like to say by way of introductory remarks to this great audience?
If I may, you can hear me, I take it.
We hear you. Fantastic. Well. You're coming in very clear, very strong. You're great.
Okay. What I would like to do, if I may, is to thank the various people that have helped make all this possible. I'd like to thank Guy, who's our webmaster. I'd like to thank Scott, who's been answering all the emails recently, enabling me to write the books. I'd like to thank Paul, who's not only the technician, but he's also a graphic artist. And I'll tell you something, this time yesterday, and it's 20 past 3 in the morning where we are, he was frantically ripping two computers to bits to make one, because the computer we were going to use broke down, and it was Sunday evening, and the shops were all shut, so we couldn't buy anything. So he had to rip 2 computers to bits to make one that worked. And it's thanks to Paul that this show's going on tonight. So big thanks to Paul. Now, I'd also like to thank John, who is, I call him a future member. He's part of the team, but because of his family commitments, he doesn't take any active role. And I'd like to thank all the people that are translating our various books and messages into various languages. An amazing
Bob, I was sort of waiting for you to thank Ringo next. Are you going to thank Ringo next?
Hang on. I'd like to thank the makeup lady. And I'd like to thank a new member who is not a million miles away from the screen I'm looking at, but we won't mention him. And I'd like to thank all the public that are either watching now or will be watching. That's what I wanted to say.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Bob.
I will just repeat what I think you already said it earlier on this evening, that I've been given a mass of answers. You can't see it, but I've got a whole file here, and I'm just going to read the answers, because the Great White Brotherhood said to me, they don't want me to talk because I could give a garbled version. They want me to read exactly the answers to the questions that you gave, because they thought carefully about the answers before giving them, and they want to make sure that the answers go out exactly as they wrote them. Okay?
Awesome.
That's excellent. Bob, is it possible, before we actually get into the answers of the questions that were provided from us to you, and you took them to the Great White Brotherhood and so graciously answered them, is it possible for you to give us just a brief synopsis of your understanding who the Great White Brotherhood are?
Yes, certainly. They've got basically one requirement, and that is that they have had to have an incarnation here on Earth to be a member of the Great White Brotherhood, because not everybody that's a human comes to Earth. A lot of people just stay in the heavenly realms and develop there. But to be part of the Great White Brotherhood, you have to have had an incarnation and know what it's like to go through what we're all going through. That's the only real requirement. Now, they're a vast organization. I understand that there's thousands, possibly tens of thousands of people who are in the Great White Brotherhood, but they don't all work doing the same thing. They're broken into little teams of people depending on their interest. Some people might be interested in healing, for instance. So there would be a group of these individuals in the heavenly spheres that work with healers that are incarnate down here. It just so happens that the group I work with are interested in the same sort of stuff that I'm interested in, and they chose me because in the heavenly spheres, they can't actually contact us. They need people like me that they've trained to be telepathic in order to be able to receive the information that they want to give us and the help and guidance and so on. And I just write it all down, as I think you know, and I put it out. And that's basically who the Great White Brotherhood are. They're a mixture of people that, when they were incarnate here, were men or women. They were different races, different skin colors. It makes no difference. The only thing that they need to have is an interest in helping people down here. What else can I tell you? They've existed for many thousands of years. A long time ago, it was much more difficult to help us because much of planet Earth was in the stranglehold of religions and so on. And if somebody like me said, "Oh, I'm getting information from an external source," I would have been considered to be a wizard or a devil worshipper and burnt at the stake. Right. So years ago, it was very difficult. Nowadays, it's much easier. And thanks to internet, it's much easier to spread the word, so to speak. So I don't know. Does that answer your question, or do you want more?
No, that was fantastic, Bob. We thank you so much for giving everybody a context and a frame of reference for that. Now, do you prefer to just take the reins, so to speak, and go ahead and read the answers of the questions we provided you?
Well, I don't really know. Do you want to read the questions first of all?
That's what I was thinking, Bob. I'll read the question, and then you provide the answer, because as you know, some of these questions are multifaceted. There's almost like questions within the questions. And I know you've had them, so I know they took a great deal of probably thought to process them, and also to answer them in the way they want them to. So if you're okay, I'll just go ahead and start it off. I'll just read question number 1 right now. Does that sound okay?
Well, yeah. The way they've answered, for instance, your very first question was, who are the Anunnaki?
Yes.
And they gave a several-page answer who the Anunnaki are. And they talk, it's much more complicated than just who are the Anunnaki. They talk about other things, which you'll learn when I read the answer. Then the next question is, who are the Nephilim? And that's another question. And they gave another answer. Wow. And so on and so on. So I don't know if you want to break your question up into these little sections.
I think so. I think so. And then you're going to be in control of this. If you need me to stop talking and you just say, hold on, I got to give you the full answer, that's fine, because I know that there are thousands of people tonight that are wanting to listen to these answers. I know that just what you just told us, Jeff and I both had our hairs on our arms stand up. So we're very, very excited to listen to this, very interested in hearing what they have to say. So if you're okay with it, let's ask the first question, which are...
And just so you know, gentlemen, we have about 600 in the chat room, and typically that's representative of about 10% of the people that are actually watching. So there's a tremendous amount of interest, and let's enjoy it.
There's one thing I noticed that you said, something that interests people a lot is this so-called soul trap, which is actually question number 12, I believe, that you asked. Yes. And I wondered if I could perhaps read their answer for those who are interested in this question, because on my site, I'm getting it all the time. Do I go to the light or don't I? And I
Please
wonder
do, Bob. That's perfect. That's a great way to start.
Yeah, go ahead and open with that one. Perfect.
So this is the question of, do we go to the light when we die, or do we not go to the light, correct?
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Take the reins.
Okay. The so-called soul trap is total nonsense. Once again, that can be traced back to the Archons. Archons take anything that is good, turn it upside down, and present it as evil. Whilst it is true that planet Earth, and indeed the whole galaxy, is surrounded by a shield of gravity, it is there for very positive reasons. In the case of planet Earth, as it rotates, if there was not some force to prevent things flying off into space, life would cease to exist, and everything not firmly connected to planet Earth would be floating about in space. Thus, gravity was created to ensure that everything that should be on Earth remains so. In the case of the galaxy, it is surrounded by gravity, as are all the other galaxies, to prevent any two galaxies from colliding. If this was to happen, the resulting explosion could hardly be imagined. However, these gravities in no way prevent humans, animals, and indeed plants, as they come to the end of their incarnations, from going off to their respective afterlife destinations. Excuse me. In the case of humans, of course, it is the higher fourth dimension, heaven. This story was invented by the Archons to encourage people to avoid going to heaven and thus finding themselves in limbo, so that the Archons could continue to benefit from the resulting unhappiness created. It is of the utmost importance that people reject this dangerous concept. We cannot reduce the stranglehold of the Archons all the time people believe them. It is only by rejecting them and their dangerous teachings that we can reduce their power. People must learn not to give any of their advice credence. By rejection, by following truth, we can reduce their power. By accepting their teachings, we increase their power over people incarnate. And that's what they said about the tunnel of light and so on.
Bob, that is profound stuff, man.
I will just say that when I was about 12 years old, I had a near-death experience and went into that tunnel, and it's an amazing thing. I didn't go right the way through. I just went so far down before I returned to my body, but it was amazing. I was in this tunnel. It looked round, but with a kind of a flat floor. I'm kind of floating along, and the walls were all covered with beautiful lights, purples and reds and blues and all sorts of colors.
Bob,
and
was there green on there as well on the walls?
I can't remember, to be honest, Jeff.
Do you remember what color the floor was?
No, I didn't look down at the floor because I was busy looking at the walls, wondering, because I'd never heard of this tunnel of light. I had this kind of accident and I had a near-death experience, which I didn't know, it didn't even know that there was such thing as near-death experiences. I was just a kid of 12 and suddenly found myself in this place, and it was just so beautiful. There was an organ playing like classical music, and it was wonderful. And I was in such peace and a feeling of love. And all of a sudden, whap, I returned to my body, and I thought, oh, I don't want to come back here. But it was an amazing experience.
I'll bet. So, Bob, whether you want to give me the Great White Brotherhood answer or your personal answer, I know you try to avoid that, but I'm not the sharpest guy. I'm a little bit slow sometimes. If the question was, should we go to the light or not, what would the answer be?
Go to the light. If you see that, there's several ways that, well, at least two ways that you can go off to heaven. The first is, now I'll explain what this tunnel of light is. When you're dying, your higher self creates a portal. I'm doing it vertically, but actually when I went down it was horizontal. Creates a portal between you or me and heaven. Your higher self opens this portal, and that's the tunnel of light, and you're meant to go down that tunnel of light. Now, equally, there's other ways that a lot of people that are quite elderly and are gradually dying, they will be met by a member of their family that's already passed on, and that person comes to guide the dying or dead person, you know, when you die, leave your body and you're floating about, and that they will guide that person off to heaven. So either way, it's important to do that, either go down the tunnel or to allow that family member to guide you to heaven. If you don't, you'll end up in this horrible place called Limbo. Now, I don't know if you know what Limbo is. It's a place where lost souls go, and they're just wandering about, and it's deeply unhappy. It's horrible there. So I strongly advise people to go either into the tunnel of light or to be guided to heaven by their loved ones.
Bob, thank you so much for that. And yeah, Jay, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for that. And there's so much discussion and a lot of passion on both sides of this. Go to the light, don't go to the light. And it's not surprising at all when something that is so important that there would be controversy and discussion and strong feelings on both sides. So I would encourage people to consult their own higher selves, consult their own higher guides. And I think someone said earlier, do what you believe is right for you at the time and listen to all the information you're given. And I tell you what, I just feel the resonance of truth pouring off of Bob in such a strong way. So thank you so much for that, Bob.
I do too. And I believe it leads to other questions, Bob. And I have a bunch of them now, but I think it might be better if we wait and get back to where, unless you want to answer them now. I mean, because I feel like what you just said about if you're elderly and you're kind of waiting to die versus someone who has a sudden shocking death, you know, where they're in a traumatic incident or accident or something like that, it would be different as far as creating the higher self heaven portal than, like you said, where it would be a slower death over time. Is that correct?
I think so, yes. I'm not quite sure why with some people this tunnel opens up and with others it doesn't. In my case, as I say, I was just a kid of about 12 and I'd never heard of any of this stuff. So I wasn't consciously thinking about it. I had this sort of accident and suddenly I was in this tunnel. I didn't have any choice. It wasn't a question of do I want to go in it or don't I? I was suddenly in the tunnel going off towards somewhere. Excellent. And as I say, I came back to myself, and so I didn't see the light of heaven and all the rest of it like some people do. But I don't know what else to say. I do know, I remember my grandmother, my wife's grandmother, who was very elderly and just dying of old age, basically, in hospital. And sometimes she was talking to us when we visited her, and sometimes she was talking to her husband, who was already in heaven, and she could see both us and him. Now, he wasn't actually visible to me. I couldn't see him at all, although I'm reasonably clairvoyant. But the old lady could see him quite clearly, and she was talking to him. And obviously he was talking to her because she could hear him. They were conversing back and forth. And then she would turn and talk to us. And it was a very strange experience. So this obviously does happen.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And let me just remind everyone in the chat room, you know, this is Bob is our guest tonight to find out what the beliefs and the feelings and the message is from the Great White Brotherhood. Let's remember to be passersby. We can all have our own opinions, and let's remain, you know, very cordial and accepting of a diversity of opinion. And I'll just throw this out there. Maybe if we could go through the questions that have already been prepared for the Great White Brotherhood.
Sure,
and hopefully we could, maybe if there's a lot of follow-up questions, we could prevail upon Bob to maybe come back again sometime in the future.
It would be my pleasure. Already it's my great pleasure to be here this evening, and I thank you very much for inviting me. And the Great White Brotherhood, and I'll come back as often as you want. It's, you know, that's what I'm here for. If I can
we're deeply moved that you are here. I mean, we all, I know everyone, I speak for the entire listening audience. I know I speak for Jeff and myself that we're profoundly moved and deeply grateful for you and the Great White Brotherhood to be here. As I've told everybody who's always asking me, I know that you are a being of great white light. As I've told you many times in our emails, I get that loving sense from you. We have connected. So again, everyone can believe and feel and understand what they want. What I know is something separate. So again, we're very grateful for you to be here.
And so was question number one about the Anunnaki? Was that question one?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you really want to know what I'm like, ask my wife. She'll tell you. Anyway.
Well, she's a lucky woman. Okay, so question number one, who are the Anunnaki?
Right. Now, I warn you, this is a long question because it goes into other things. And before I start, I need to explain something because it mentions something that if you don't know about it, you'll have difficulty understanding. Now, we live on planet Earth in a monstrous galaxy or series of galaxies, call it whatever you like. But if you could stand back and look at it all, you would see our entire universe as a great ball, and it's got a coating of gravity around it that holds it all together as an enormous ball, okay? I want you to try and visualize that, please. Now, if you were to get into a rocket ship and travel outwards past our galaxy, because our galaxy eventually ends somewhere, our entire universe ends somewhere. It's not infinite, it ends somewhere. You would go through the thing of gravity and you would go out into, I call it space, but it would be into nothingness. And if you went on, you would come to another galaxy similar to ours. So can you imagine there's more than one galaxy? In fact, there's an infinite number of these things spread all over everywhere. And each one has a version of God. Our version of God is based on love in all its various facets. But not all, and each one of these different galaxies or universes has its own version of God, separate from our version of God, and it would explore other avenues. Okay? This is already quite difficult to understand, but have you managed to understand that, do you think?
Yes.
It's amazing. It's very enlightening.
Okay, I explain that because they talk about this or that in this explanation. But let me start. The Anunnaki, and I warn you, it's quite long. It is not easy to fully understand just who the Anunnaki are because, as is so often the case, the waters have been muddied by false information that has entered collective wisdom. So in order to accept what we will say, people will have to unlearn what they think they know about this group. The Anunnaki are a non-physical group of entities that entered our reality in astral form a long time ago. Okay, you got that?
Yep.
You understand? Okay.
This is fascinating, Bob. Fascinating. We're on the edge of our seats. Please continue.
We would like to give a figure in millions of years, but it would be rather meaningless as life has come and gone due to various extermination level events many times. Okay? Life in human form can be traced back for many millions of years. And we can say that however long human life has existed, the Anunnaki were already here. So in astral form, this group preceded humanity as we know it in physical form.
Wow. If
this group exists, they must have an origin. Now, as far as we are aware, and the we obviously is the Great White Brotherhood, as far as we are aware, the Anunnaki came from a life system not connected to ours. And by that, they're talking about one of these other systems that I mentioned earlier. By that, we mean outside of the galaxies that make our reality, there are others that live by different rules. And it goes on. We are giving you a book number 7 in this series, which will attempt to explain at least one of these alternate realities. And the Anunnaki were in one of those areas. That's a book that they're dictating to me at the moment. Life in these areas is totally different, totally unconnected to any form of life as we can imagine it, either in physicality or in the astral dimensions. Therefore, it just happened that in or on one of these life areas, a group of astral entities were formed that we would consider to be without any form of humanity, by which we imply that the basic modus operandi, which means a way or method of doing something, of the basic modus operandi of planet Earth is love, or should be. This applies to all the dimensions. Even what we consider to be the negative planes and the negative dimensions, if one can step back far enough to really see the big picture, is connected to love, because, as we have explained, we need the destructive forces to help keep existence in balance. I don't know if you know what that means, that if everything grew and never died, we'd be completely covered with plants and animals, and right. So you need things to die, and that's where the destructive forces come in. But it all keeps life in balance. Okay.
So profound. You can feel, you just feel the frequency and the vibration of truth and sincerity from every word that you're saying.
That's me shaking with fear.
I like to see that, Bob. It's sincerity.
Thank you. So, no matter how unlikely this seems, our galaxy, our dimensions are basically positive, and positivity implies love in the broadest sense. We are not referring to sexual attraction or even family unity. We refer to a force that permits life in all its attributes to come together and create more life. We refer to positivity. We refer to trying to bring harmony and all the aspects that make life work. This attitude is the basis on which our whole multiverse is founded. And by multiverse, they mean physicality plus all the different dimensions. But not all multiverses are like that. There are in other areas other multiverses, and they are many, that have as their foundation other rules. The one the Anunnaki came from was created using negativity as its baseline. Now, do you remember me saying to you that elsewhere, the God in charge of whatever galaxy it might be would have a different way, a different idea about what to explore, okay? Because I forgot to mention, all these various gods are totally independent, but they retain a link to each other. So they're all combined. Okay. You must understand that what we refer to as God is endless. There are versions of God in other areas, and those versions are seeking experience endlessly. It just so happens that the version of God that creates our reality chose positivity, love, as the modus operandi of creation. Also, it just happened that in another area of creation, that version of God chose to explore negativity, the opposite of love. Therefore, the beings that were placed in that area reflected the creative force of that version of God. In other words, that version of God created in astral form beings totally lacking in anything that we would associate with love. Over time, some of these beings decided to explore the astral realms remote from their area and discovered our reality. At that time, there was not much going on in our reality, as humans had not yet been formed, at least not in any recognizable form. Now, it's going to talk about the 8 dimensions. Do you know what I mean by 8 dimensions?
Yes, we have that in the questions towards the end, yes.
Yeah, okay. And at that time, it was so long ago that the angels of construction hadn't yet put any life in them at all. They were just like 8 empty carrier waves, okay? So a group of these Anunnaki beings installed themselves in the astral realms of our dimensions. We can say that the 8 dimensions had been formed, but there was no life as we know it in any of them, just the carrier waves. The question we might ask is, what dimension did they attach themselves to? We wish you to understand that although there are 8 dimensions in our reality, they are not more holy or spiritual as people imagine. Dimension 1 or dimension 8, although being of different frequencies, as we have explained in various books, are not different in the sense of any one being of a higher spiritual level than another. They are all the same in that sense, just 8 sets of carrier waves. It also is true that all life, no matter where it is, consists of vibrations, frequencies. No matter what version of God we are considering, they all consist of vibrations. So these Anunnaki consist of vibrations. Their frequencies are not the same as ours, but at the same time, vibrations are vibrations. And as the dimensions are created of vibrations, the Anunnaki were able to install themselves in a dimension which, we remind you, was largely empty as far as any life as we know it is concerned. But when life was installed by our God's archangels, these archangels needed the dimensions to put our life forms in. And so, as each dimension was required for some purpose, the Anunnaki were chased to an empty dimension and then moved on each time that dimension was required. Eventually, the only place that was left in which they could install themselves was the etheric realm. Do you know about the etheric realm? Just outside of our physical body. Even though the 3rd dimension is not being used at the moment, the archangels refuse to allow them to camp there, so they set up home in at least one of the realms of the etheric, because the etheric realm, like all the places, all the dimensions, is multi-layered. The etheric contains many levels of different vibrations, and although it serves a vital function for life, it has sufficient layers that it can be used as a dumping ground for a number of rejects from normal life. Limbo is in the etheric, for example. So, to this day, the Anunnaki are to be found in the etheric realms, which, unfortunately, is so close to physicality that it is possible for them to influence negative people. Therefore, for long ages, as the Anunnaki are totally without love, if they can find people who also live without love, they can link with, overshadow them, and that person finds his negative reinforced. I hope this is not too boring.
Bob, I have to tell you a couple things. In the chat room, somebody said, this feels like a deep remembering. And several people have also commented that your aura is a full specter rainbow, and I can see it as well. This is all very, very great information, not even close to boring, sir.
No, continue, please.
Okay. It's not a great deal more to go. But we remind you, the Anunnaki are always non-physical and don't themselves have any form, being just energy. So the person being overshadowed would not find his features altering as he might if he was being overshadowed by reptilians, for example. So the Anunnaki influenced in a negative form a number of negative people over many millions of years. The personalities of Anunnaki are the complete opposite to what any decent human might be. They are cold in a spiritual sense, without emotion, without any sense of caring for other people. They have a strong sense of self-survival, although being non-physical, they cannot be harmed. They are a different species to the Archons. But although they are different, their aims and objectives are similar. You may ask why the archangels, charged with creating all that exists in our area of life, permitted them to stay at all. The answer is that our archangels have respect for all of God's creations, whatever form they take, and so allowed them to stay. The good news is that as we move into ascension, this inflow of positivity will reach all levels, physical and non-physical, and it may be that the Anunnaki will not like to stay in an area full of love and will move away. But we must also say that planet Earth has moved through a number of these swings of the pendulum, that from positivity to negativity and back to positivity again. They've survived a number of these swings of the pendulum, and they merely shut down their operations, waiting until the pendulum of life swung back into negativity again before revealing themselves once more. And that's the end of that.
Bob, that was so profound and so moving. I'm so mind blown. A lot of it resonated with me. Are you okay if I just ask a couple of follow-up questions? I know,
Please, I know you
may not be able to answer them, but that's fine. So knowing that they're only coming around to influence Earth behavior in the darker times, you know, if you think of the Hermetic axiom with the pendulum.
I didn't say that. They influence negative people whenever they can. They're influencing negative people now, and we'll try to do so. But it's us that will change, and the negative people will eventually be gone, and there will be no more negative people for them to influence.
Okay, so my apologies. So then that would mean then the negative people, they could be influencing right now at any level of government?
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. That's the whole point.
And are they doing it in a way that those people are aware consciously that they're influencing them, or do they not even know and they just possess their soul, so to speak?
Right. They don't know. And negative people are, I should imagine, filled with hatred for all life, pretty much like loving people are filled with love for all life. And they get influenced by these. Well, actually, you'll see in a minute, the Anunnaki don't have that much influence anymore. The Archons are the real dangerous people or beings. But yes, they will influence negative people, but the people themselves will have no idea that they're being influenced.
Wow. Okay. So one more question real quick. I know, Jeff, you're muted. And I know we have a lot to get through, so I'm not going to ask you questions, and we're going to let you get to these answers. So are there any benevolent form of the Anunnaki, or there is none?
No, because they come from an area where that God of that area chose to explore hate rather than love. It just so happens that we're lucky, and where we are, our God decided to explore love as his theme.
So one last question then, Bob, with that. So all the ancient texts that all these quote unquote, we won't mention their names, but great, esoteric thought leaders and writers and authors who have translated these texts of the Anunnaki, and many of them, and I'm not mentioning names, have interpreted that there were a benevolent side to the Anunnaki, obviously, and that they were just constantly switching roles, and, the Earth was a chessboard. Did the Anunnaki themselves tweak the text to make people like us who are translating these or attempting to translate these believe that they were benevolent?
Give me a moment and I'll get the answer for you. The Anunnaki played no role in tweaking these texts. Whoever was doing it themselves. It had nothing to do with the Anunnaki.
Wow, amazing. Okay, continue.
Right. Well, the next one I've got on my list here is Nephilim. Okay. Yes. So it's a bit shorter, thank God. The Nephilim, The Nephilim are not actually a physical force as we would know it to be. And yet they are not entirely just a thought form, imagination. They are unrelated to the Anunnaki and the Archons, but they do exist in an area of life about which very little is known. So far, we, the Great White Brotherhood, have not discussed this area of life. So I don't know anything about it. Anyway, what we can explain to you is that even within the different dimensions of our area of life, and they're talking about all our galaxy and our different dimensions, within the different dimensions of life, of our area of life, that we have so far tried to explain to you, there remains other areas that we have not yet touched on. The Nephilim are a life force from one of these areas. They were part of the creative forces put into position when life was first created, and as life was being experimented with that long time ago, they were created as part of the balancing forces between growth and decay. The Nephilim obviously were and are part of the decay or negative process. Now, they are no longer required by the archangels of life, so their influence is being removed. As regard which dimension they live in, they are not really contained within any particular dimension. So we must say that the Nephilim both do and don't exist. Until we can explain these other areas of life, until we can explain these other areas of life, the life force that are contained within them will remain a mystery. As a last thing, we will repeat that the gold that they were after is the secret of life in all its aspects. The name Nephilim comes to us through folklore today, but they have no means of influencing people either positively or negatively. So from what I've understood from that, they were a very early form of life that were created and are no longer needed. So they're shunted into an area that we sort of don't know anything about. That's all I can say about that.
Bob, if I may, I'm extrapolating from that. Wouldn't it be safe to say that there is absolutely no reason for anyone that's listening to this call tonight or that will see it in the future, there's absolutely no reason to have any fear of the Nephilim?
No, and either the Anunnaki, there's no real need to be frightened of them, because as you'll see later, they are being kept very much kept down by the Anunnaki, who are the major danger.
You mean the Archons? You mean the Archons?
Excuse me, the Archons. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Archons, who are the major negative force influencing us all at the moment. Okay.
Awesome. Now, go ahead, Bob.
No, ask away.
No, I was just going to say my only other question with the Nephilim, because we're going to end up getting this question. Were these age-old giants, which, as you know, we have access to these skeletons all over the earth that have been covered up, were they in fact the Nephilim, or is that separate too?
No, the giants were just another experiment by God's archangels in various life forms. There was all sorts of things created over a long period of time, and the giants, who I believe still exist to a certain extent,
right.
Maybe not like 40 feet tall, but I think that they still do exist in remote areas. Yes, they were one of the experiments, a bit like the, what's the, oh God, the word of that ancient race that died out. Doesn't matter. If I think of it, I'll mention it. But there's been a number of different races that have come and gone over time.
Right.
Little hobbit-sized creatures and all sorts of things. Okay. So I'll go on if I may.
Bob, can I make one statement? Yes. Do you have over there on the continent? Do you have those those dogs that sit in the back of the windows on cars and their heads just go up and down like this? That's what I'm doing as you talk. My head's just going up and down, up and down. I love this information.
Yeah, continue, Bob, because there's a lot of answers.
Down the back of your shirt to hold you still.
Okay, so anyway, the third part of the question is the fallen archangels.
Right. The next note I've got is Marduk, Enlil, and Enki. Yes. Okay. These entities such as Marduk, Enlil, Enki, etc., are only thought forms and do not exist as actual physical or astral beings. But thoughts are powerful things. And so, for those who believe, these entities seem very real. Equally, there are those who have built careers pretending to have been in contact with some of these entities, but it is not true. None of them exist in reality, only as thought forms. So, wow. I don't know if I see Jeff.
Yeah, he just went to get some coffee. It's okay. He's listening in the background.
I thought he'd been transported away.
He's still there.
Okay. No, I don't know if you believe that Marduk and company exists, but apparently they're actually just created. But once again, I don't know if you know this, but if people think about something, if a group of people think about something, it creates in the etheric realms a form, right, that can eventually sort of think and act for itself, but it's not real. It's just a thought form.
So Bob, then who would put those names in all of these ancient texts? Because obviously these people have decoded those names. Is there a force behind the names?
Hang on. This is the answer I just got. When people decided that these beings exist, they needed to give them names. So these were the names that were chosen, but it was kind of at random. There was no being called Marduk, for example, that this thought was based on. It's just that people started to believe that things were real, a bit like people believe the devil is real, etc.
Exactly right.
And they give it a name. That's the answer I get.
Bob, let me just say that tonight, as you're speaking, and as this is going out, the fear and guilt control matrix is under heavy fire, and there's no way it can stand up against this type of truth.
Bob, this is so profound right now. Like these answers you're giving, I mean, honestly, I don't want to sound like an internet marketer, but there's going to be lots of people for a long time watching this video.
I don't know if I can find it, but somewhere the Great White Brotherhood said to me, I'm not going to be able to find it in amongst all this mass. Just give me just a second.
Bob, you are in charge. Take all the time you need.
No. I don't want to keep people. Right. The Great White Brotherhood said to me just the other day that they are hoping to create a tsunami that will flood all the errors and lies and wash them away once and for all.
Well, they're doing a good job. They're doing a good job.
Well, it depends what people believe. People are free to believe. I'm reading you all this. I'm not asking anybody to believe it. You can believe what you like, you know. It's up to people. But I understand that the Great White Brotherhood collectively have quite a lot of knowledge. And I do know that if they don't know the answer to something, they don't make something up. They don't mention it. They will say quite openly, we don't know the answer to this. Yeah. And in fact, I think to one of your questions, they have to admit that they don't know the answer, but we'll get to that later. Now, let's go on to the Archons, if we may.
Bob, let me just let you know that one of my good friends named Heidi Vandenberg, she's not the most subtle lady, but she says, and I'll edit it. She says, I effing love this guy.
Yeah, and she's also very intuitive, and she would say right away, right, if she was sensing anything. So, I mean, I already know because I've told everybody. So I know Heidi's very sensitive and empathic and intuitive as well. So that's awesome. But continue, Bob. We won't interrupt.
Hello to Heidi. Now, Archons, actually, they've given us quite a short answer because they've mentioned the Archons at great length in various books that we've already put out. And they can be found for free on our site. So, you know, they're just given a brief overview, just to answer your question. The Archons are similar to the Anunnaki in that they are non-physical. It is possible that they came from the same source as the Anunnaki, in other words, this other planets, other galaxy somewhere, and have been present on Earth in the etheric realms for a long time. So they share the etheric realms with the what were they called? With the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are in the etheric realms, and the Archons are also in the etheric realms, from which they can quite easily influence people because the etheric realm is just outside of physicality. And actually, you can see this if you look into a mirror, especially if you've got a light behind you or something, you can see this white mist around you. That's your etheric body. Anyway, however, they seem to be rather more intelligent than the Anunnaki and have become expert at taking anything positive and turning it upside down to create negativity. They are not good at actually inventing stories. They, from the etheric, also influence negative people. In a way, they are at war with the Anunnaki. Both groups will have their power reduced as we swing into positivity.
Awesome.
That's all they said about the about the Archons. But I will say from what they've said in various books, the Archons are the major negative influence behind the scenes. And I'm very much looking forward to the day that we move into this positivity that's called ascension and that they're chased away because we could do without.
So I know, Bob, that's a question later, and I know we're going to answer that, but would you say that right now all of the darkness on planet Earth, they're behind it?
I won't say all because people have free will and bad people are quite free to make up their own minds to do bad things. They don't need to be influenced by people are not like neutral, and you're influenced to be good by a good angel, influenced to be bad by some bad thing. People have their own intelligence and their own consciousness and their own desire to do things. And some people are naturally good and some people are naturally bad. So there's quite a lot of people that are not being influenced by any negative force, but are doing evil things anyway.
Fascinating.
Powerful. Bob, continue on whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay, the next one's very short. Artificial intelligence. Although it's very short, it's something that we could talk about for hours because it's very important. Artificial intelligence. This is another weapon, this time created by demonic forces you know as the Greys.
Wow.
Now, what that means is the little robots that you see, the little bulbous-headed, behind the scenes, in the lower fourth dimension, are demonic forces.
Right.
And they control those little, not all of them, because lots of different species of what we call aliens have very similar little creatures like that.
Right. And Bob, they do a great job of clarifying that in the Aliens book, which Jeff and I have both read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, if you guys have not read their books, again, it's thegreatwhitebrotherhood.org. Please read their books. They put them out for free. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. The next one is black goo. Black goo is a natural tar-like substance that came to Earth in an asteroid. The goo is harmless, but it does contain a virus that can affect people's minds and tend to promote negative thoughts.
Is that Morgellons disease, Bob?
No, that's different. They talk about that later on, and we'll get to that hopefully.
Okay.
No, Morgellons disease is something totally different. But I don't know personally, I don't know too much about this black goo. I know that people that have come into contact with it say that they very quickly start to feeling hatred and desire to harm people and things like that. And from what the Great White Brotherhood said, there's a virus in the black goo that can affect you.
So one question about the artificial intelligence with the gray biobots, the alien, the demonic ones, is the goal right now with, because we see such a shift going away from, natural law of femininity, divine masculinity to this transhumanism, this deviation of the species. Is that the artificial intelligence behind that? They're trying to create a humanoid form of artificial intelligence or make us more artificial?
Where it will end up, I'm not too sure. But what they're actually trying to create is a place where people can no longer think for themselves.
Right.
And they talk about it at quite some length in a later piece of all this stuff. People are getting more and more used to the concept that you've got to be constantly helped by something. When I was at school, when I was at school, you went to the library to look up answers to questions that the teacher would, or you listened during the lesson, because usually during the lesson the teacher gave the answer in one form or another. Nowadays, kids don't bother to listen. They're sending text messages all the time on their phones, and then when they get home, they look at the question, tap Google, and up comes the answer, and they just write down the answer. And
this is all Jeff and I talk about on all of our shows. This is all we talk about.
Right. Well, it's one of the unfortunate side effects of artificial intelligence. Now, it can be very good. For instance, if a car has got this automatic braking system where it can sense if somebody dashes out in front of the car and the car suddenly brakes and stops, so to avoid crushing that person, that's a good form of artificial intelligence. But, we've got to be careful with artificial intelligence. It's like everything, it's a good servant, but a bad master.
Right. Okay, continue, Bob. Keep going. This is so unbelievable. Thank you so much for this.
Is Elohim.
Oh, this will be great.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. It's not very long. The Elohim are a group of non-physical entities that live in the etheric realms. We've got so many of these different groups that live in the etheric realms. Their origins are largely unknown because the Akashic record contains little information about them. Excuse me. Therefore, to answer any question as to their origin would be speculation on our part, and we don't like to speculate. What we can say about them is that they have been in our reality for a long time and have influenced man incarnate in a negative fashion since their arrival here. By this, we express our opinion that they were not originally created to be part of our reality, but came from elsewhere, as did the Anunnaki and the Archons. It may be that they came from the same source, but we have no definite proof of this. Once again, as we swing into ascension, their power and influence will be reduced and eventually removed. In the non-physical realms, there is a constant battle going on between the negative forces, Archons, Anunnaki, Elohim, demons, and various others, which causes much turmoil as they battle to impose their will on us incarnate and their domination over their negative opponents. But all this negativity will fade in time. So they don't actually say very much about the Elohim, I'm sorry to say, because they don't know very much. But once again, it's another negative force, astral force, that lives in the etheric realms. That's all I can say.
So, Bob,
very powerful information.
Incredible. But do you think all of these negative forms, entities, astral beings. Obviously, you just named them all. Do you think that in addition to fighting amongst themselves, they're also aligning? And I don't want to steal your thunder for a future question, but are they also aligning with various groups on this planet so that they're also fighting amongst each other?
I think you'll find that it's really only the Archons that are in control. The Archons are very powerful and they tend to dominate all the other forces. Now, the evil forces have a problem in that they do not normally have any means of contacting us humans, us incarnate, because they are designed for a different purpose, which is to promote the destruction of anything that dies. If a plant dies, it needs to be got rid of. If an animal dies, its body needs to be got rid of. The same with us humans. When we die, our physical bodies need to be decomposed and the atoms recycled. And
Right.
the demons, that is their function. And the only way they can come into contact with us humans is when they are deliberately invoked through black magic ceremonies and so on. But they normally have a great difficulty in influencing us, despite what religious people have said over many years. But the Archons and the others, particularly the Archons, they are always waiting in the wings. And if someone does negative things, the Archons will eventually be there. I mean, if you do something negative, you smack your wife on the nose or something,
Right.
That's not going to cause the Archons to appear. But if you spend a long time promoting some negative idea, the Archons will appear and take over your mind and push it along as well.
So does that stand to reason then, Bob, that people, and again, I'm just going to use this person because it's the first thought form that popped into my head, but Hillary Clinton, that whatever we refer to as the cabal or the what do we call it, the transhumanist, the globalist, would it stand to reason that the leadership of that regime is most likely possessed by Archons at all times?
I will not talk about individuals because I'm not perfect and
Right.
I have no right to judge others. But
Right.
I will say that if you notice that there's some force, whatever it might be, or political or military or whatever, that is doing something that's not connected with love, you can be sure and certain that eventually the Archons will make an appearance.
And as you said, most of the time the people do not know that they're under their influence, correct?
No. I think in the case of the reptilians, they will know about it, because if somebody gets really overshadowed by reptilian, apparently they can their physical appearance alters slightly and someone will notice. So there's a fair chance that if someone's being influenced by negative reptilians, and not all reptilians are negative.
I love that, Bob.
If somebody's been influenced by negative reptilians, there's a fair chance that they will be aware of that. But whether if you're being influenced by a negative force, or indeed in the other sense, if someone's being influenced by positive forces, you wouldn't necessarily know about it.
Interesting.
Bob,
Yeah.
let me just underline something you said, which I think gives such great hope. I think you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I think you just identified and said that the most powerful dark force has no access to us as humans in life unless we invoke them. That's
right. Even with the Archons, if you don't do negative things, you won't attract, because it's a question of mutual attraction and also vibrations. The Archons vibrate to a certain frequency, and we can make our frequency move according to how we are. If we're very positive, you may have noticed in some of the old paintings, you see these saints and they appear to have a halo of light around them.
Right.
That is because being so holy, their natural vibration is almost at the point of white light. And
Right.
people can see that. But on the opposite sense, if people get involved with negativity, they will lower their frequency to the point where it's more or less the same frequency as that of the Archons, and then the Archons can influence them.
Wow.
Fantastic information.
Equally, if someone is working, spending his life doing good, he will raise his frequency to the point where positive influences, I won't call them angels, but positive influences can come and influence that person to do more good.
That's beautiful, Bob. And I really appreciate your time. I want to be respectful of your time. If you can share some more time with us, I would invite you to please do so and continue on with the answers provided from us from the Great White Brotherhood so graciously.
Now, question 2, I can't remember what it was.
I can read it to you. It was Enki and his son.
Okay.
Yep. You want me to read it to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says so. It's Enki.
To the public.
Yeah,
I've got the question.
Okay, got it.
Give the main point so the public know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it just is Enki and his son Thoth or Toth or however it's pronounced in service. You already kind of answered it. And benevolent to sapiens cause of the Anunnaki, and you said they have none of the Anunnaki are benevolent. So that question really you already answered.
It's Enki and Thoth. I don't know how you pronounce it either.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll read you what they've said. Neither of these beings actually exist, only as thought forms.
I love it.
However, the Emerald Tablets were created by wise beings, nothing to do with either Enki or Thoth. But the message has been distorted over time through mistranslations and poetic license. So neither Enki nor Thoth have any influence on us humans.
Interesting. So in that same question beyond the Emerald Tablets, and you've already started to mention about the Reptilians, do you want to talk about the separation of the Archons and the Reptilians and how they kind of fit in the power structure?
Hang on, let me find out. Oh, before I get to that, can I just mention about clones?
Absolutely, yes, please talk about clones.
Because as I was getting the information from them, they were giving me quite short answers sometimes, and then I would go on to the next question, and then they would expand on a previous question, by which time I was on a different page, so it gets a bit confusing. Anyway, clones.
Hey, Bob, let me just say, I know that we're just a few days before Halloween here in the United States, but this sure feels like Christmas to me.
Yes, it is Christmas. Thank you. Continue.
It should be Christmas every day, shouldn't it?
Yes.
It should.
Yes.
Anyway, clones. It is not possible to create active clones in the sense that is suggested.
Wow.
Even when clones of animals are created, none of these are identical to the original. So if a clone of a famous person could be created, it probably would not look or think identically to the original. But many famous people have body doubles.
Wow.
Also, once a person dies, it is not true that there might be a clone waiting in the wings.
Awesome. Okay, good.
Okay.
Good.
Now, where are we?
I know it doesn't matter to you, Bob, but I so agree with that. That is fantastic stuff.
Yeah, well, it does matter to me because if I get all this stuff and nobody believed it, it would all be a bit pointless, wouldn't it? So if I've got one person who believes what I'm saying, or at least part of what I'm saying, that's a good thing.
Bob,
now,
do you know over? I forget it. I'm 100% on your side.
No, ask away. I'm here at your service. So ask.
I was just going to ask you a silly question. Do you over there on the continent understand what a bromance is?
No. Romance, yes, but
a bromance is where a man like me has feelings for a man like you of great respect and admiration. So I'm having a bromantic moment right now.
Brotherly love, so to speak.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now let me see where I am now, because it gets a bit confusing here.
So question number 4, if it can help you, was: are the royal families, like the royal bloodline families, are they identifiable as a species of humans?
Did we answer question 3?
Okay.
Who is controlling the political elites of the deep state? That's right. Well, okay. Question 3. There are 2 answers to this question. 1, these people who have chosen to rule the world are acting on their own behalf, sometimes as individuals and sometimes in groups, which is what we were talking about earlier, that people can decide for themselves what to do. 2, equally, many of them are influenced by a variety of beings in the etheric realms. These would be Archons at the head, but who, in turn, might work by influencing negative reptilians. The Anunnaki seldom become involved directly with humanity because they are at war, in a sense, with the Archons, and the Archons are better at controlling humanity than the Anunnaki.
Wow.
The Anunnaki are largely being frustrated by the Archons, who keep them on the sidelines. There are some people influenced by demonic forces, but it is rare. The vast majority are answerable to the Archons. Human people are real humans, but as we are, but because of their upbringing, have allowed either Reptilian or Archons to overshadow them. Wow. Only Reptilians can cause a change in the appearance of a person, and the Archons are formless. That's what they said.
Okay, so good question then for you to follow up with those 2 then, because we hear this all the time. It's possible, Bob, if I understand what you just said from the Great White Brotherhood, that many of our political leaders, and I would say political leaders all over the planet, could really be reptilians disguised in human form, correct?
No, they are humans, just like you and I are, but they can be overshadowed by reptilians, by evil reptilians. And so their thought process can be influenced by reptilians or Archons, or both, either working in a chain or working separately or whatever, but humans are humans. If you're looking at a person, you're not looking at a reptilian that's pretending to be a human. You're looking at a real human.
So then you're saying, again, this is so fascinating to me, and I apologize if I'm not understanding. My brain is so puny, but you're saying that the Archons and the Reptilians are actually at times aligned?
They've got the same aims and objectives. So if they can find a psychopath, they will work with that psychopath to produce as much evil as possible.
Wow.
Now, they might do it, just one of them might do it, while the Archons are busy doing something else, or vice versa. But I think it's possible for them both to influence a person.
So Bob, this is a question that's going to get asked. I'm sure it's being asked in the chat room right now. And I don't know if we asked you this question in these, so I'll just put it in there right now. It's relative to what we're talking about. Are they feeding off of our soul energy in some capacity, meaning both the Reptilians and the Archon? I mean, I know they're obviously around when we're psychopathic or evil or negative, but what is the energetic transfer? There's people that talk about, it's called a bioemission, but is there some sort of energy that they're taking from us from when we're in negative form?
Yes. Astral beings, whatever they are, don't need to eat like we do. Right. They get their energy directly from the cosmos, so to speak. We know when we die and go off to heaven, we don't eat or drink anymore, but we are still alive. Right. we're an energy force and we get our energy from somewhere. Now, the Archons and the Reptilian, now the Archons are different because they are both physical and non-physical.
Wow.
They can be either. I don't mean that there's two sorts. I mean, the same one reptilian can sometimes be physical and sometimes just be an astral person,
right?
Astral reptilian. But the Archons, they don't need to get any force at all to survive, but they get enjoyment from causing harm. So that is a form of energy, so to speak. You know, if you're a good person and you help someone, it gives you joy. Or even if you see something good that's happening, it gives you joy. And that's an energy. And the Archons are doing that, but in a negative sense. So they don't actually need it to survive, but it gives them a buzz, so to speak. And it does... It makes them stronger. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you do something good, you help someone, it not only makes you feel good, but you get a buzz of energy. You feel more energetic for a while.
Absolutely.
You know? Right. Well, the Archons do that in the opposite sense. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. The Archons do that in the opposite sense. Yeah.
That is so profound.
Totally.
Bobby and I have the same problem hitting the mic, but it just makes so much more sense than they've got to eat us to survive. It has nothing to do with it. It's just
they can't eat us because they've got no physical body to eat with.
It makes them almost more diabolical, doesn't it? It's not even a need for sustenance. It's just a need for toying with us. They're like a cosmic kid with a magnifying glass trying to cook an ant.
Yeah.
You say that, but I presume you are both good people. You certainly look as if you're both good people. Yeah. And so you feel the need to help people and you feel the need to do good things. You don't have to do it. No one's pushing you to do it, but you feel that need. And I think the Archons are exactly the same in the opposite sense. They don't need to do anything, but they feel that that's what they've got to do.
So profound.
Well, it's fairly obvious when you think about it.
It is.
Nothing's difficult when you think about it, but you do need a basis of truth to start with. If you think that Archons are real people, for instance, walking about in the streets, you're lost before you start. You have to realize that Archons and the Anunnaki and all the rest are non-physical. Because a lot of people don't believe that the non-physical exists. They don't believe that there's any life after death. They don't believe that there's any astral worlds and all the rest of it. It takes a certain education to get people to understand that there's many, many dimensions of life, not just this physicality.
Right.
And once you can accept that, then it starts to open the door to understanding the various life forms that are contained within these dimensions.
So, Bob, are the reptilians then also in the, what astral dimension, or are they also in the Arc realms, as just like the Anunnaki and the Archons, or where are they?
Let's see what we got. Hang on. I'm going on a bit now. I'm going to read something that I must have got a while ago that I came across. It's actually printed out. Once again, excuse me, it's a little bit long. It's 2 and a bit pages long, but I'll read it to you. It's about the reptilians.
Okay, please do.
When describing the so-called reptilians, we need to distinguish fact from fiction. There has been much fake information perpetrated concerning them, which has infiltrated the collective wisdom and is accepted as fact when it is not so. Let us first say that there has been throughout the long history of man a number of different races, some of which survived and some of which have died out. Equally, there has been a number of mythical beings resembling humans somewhat, that were never real, but that people consider used to live. Lastly, there are various creatures that live in the etheric and astral realms that people have seen from time to time and have become legend over the years. And immediately Hat Man, Shadow Man, and the Hag springs to mind. It is important to try to discern fact from fiction.
Amazing.
With regard to reptilians, we wish to say that such a race does exist, but they do not necessarily have the powers that are sometimes attributed to them. The so-called reptilians are an ancient race that chose, like certain other races, to live apart from us humans, and so most of them live in the underground caverns, of which there are many not far under the surface of the earth. However, just like us humans, there are a number of different types, some friendly to us, some hostile, just as we find with humanity. We could say that they started out vaguely human, but that would not be exactly true. Many years ago, the directors of life, when they were experimenting with different forms to inhabit the earth, discovered that the basic human shape gave the greatest possibility for successful living on the face of the earth. So we have a variety of life forms with a head, body, 2 forearms, and 2 legs. Not only humans have this shape, but most mammals also follow this pattern, even though most animals found it easier to walk on all fours. So to return to the reptilians, they are one of the human-like life forms that were placed on Earth long years ago and have survived living apart from other human life forms, us, for instance, thus avoiding any conflict with us, which could have resulted in their extinction, as was the case of the giants and virtually all the human-like life forms, the skeletal remains of which are discovered from time to time. The Neanderthal, for instance, and that was the people I was trying to think of earlier on.
Right.
Neanderthal. Thus, they tend to live underground and have avoided the extinction-level events that have rocked the planet for a number of times. This has given them the ability to develop the gifts of the spirit that we all have quiescent in us. So they are attributed with having almost miraculous powers, telekinesis, teleportation, clairvoyance, and so on. Thus, if seen by us humans, they can seem to disappear at will, jump huge distances, and control the minds and bodies of humans. We draw a distinction between humans and reptilians mainly to make an explanation easy, but we wish to stress that reptilians are a close cousin of us humans and could, if they chose, interbreed with humans. However, they are a proud and arrogant race of beings that regard us as primitive and tend to stay away from us. There are some of the more friendly ones that study us rather as we study animals. At the other extreme, there are some that enslave some humans rather as white people tended to enslave black people years ago. Lastly, it must be said that there are a psychopathic few who overshadow wealthy and influential individuals for exactly the same reasons that those humans, being psychopathic, control the masses. So to recapitulate, there is this old race of beings that are basically human, that were created long ago, that live apart from us and are much more advanced than us. They have exactly the same personalities as us, both good and bad. They do not look like us, but we could say the same about an Australian Aboriginal compared to a European person. They have this vague reptilian look, some more than others, the result of eons of interbreeding and also of living underground, but they are an offshoot of the human race in many ways. That's what they said.
Wow. So that group is somewhat humanoid reptilian, so almost a reptoid.
Yes, but they are not animal. They don't come from the animal race. They come from humanity.
Right.
The archangels that made us humans made a variety of different creatures, like the Neanderthals, like the so-called hobbits and so on, and the reptilians were one of those. And the reptilians broke away from us, decided to live underground, and over time have developed this somewhat reptilian look. But they are not reptilians as such. They are as human as you and I, in a way, although their mindset would be totally different from ours.
Right. So it was almost an evolutionary adaptation for them to become more reptilian because they're underground, right?
Yeah, yes. And the way they collectively decided to push their life forward. We humans, well, you will notice, as they mentioned, the Aboriginals of Australia, they live by different rules than we do, largely. They look different from us because they've been cut off from us people. And I'm not talking about white people as opposed to black people or anything like that. I'm talking about the way we've all developed as compared to them. They develop differently, and thus they look different and so on, and think differently.
So
Bob, I just had...
Oh, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Bob, I just had the most amazing thought. And as you were reading that, and Jay has read this book, I wrote a book some time back that I was featured on Coast to Coast AM, which is very nice. And it sounded almost like you were reading from my book, Bob. So the question that came to my mind is, I wonder if at some times and in some ways that I've actually also received some information from the Great White Brotherhood. Is that possible?
I'm sure you have. Now, there can be many versions of untruth, but there's only one version of truth. If something is true, there's only one version of it. So you may not actually have been influenced by the Great White Brotherhood, but they're not the only group spreading truth. So you could have been influenced by any one of a number of groups of people that are trying to help develop humanity in a positive sense. So yes, I'm sure if you've got very similar information to this, and assuming that what I'm saying to you is true, and you've got the same stuff more or less, and that would be true, it's come from somewhere. And you can't, well, you can contact your higher self, which is where all information is stored. But other than that, you will be given the information by some positive force, either the Great White Brotherhood or another source. Now, that doesn't mean, even if it is the Great White Brotherhood, it doesn't mean to say it's the same little group that I work with, because as I mentioned right at the beginning, there are a number of these different, a number of different groups, all with different agendas and so on.
But Jay, he could have been reading from serpents and doves in the Garden of the Gods right there.
Yeah, he could have. So real quick, Bob, because we're getting tons of questions in the chat. A lot of people, unfortunately, as what happens on the internet, come in and they don't pay attention. They're not listening, or they come in at midstream, and so the question keeps getting asked: who created them? And I've already typed in there that these archangels that you've mentioned, that are mentioned in the books, are the creating force. But did you want to answer that so I'm not misspeaking?
Who are we talking about? The reptilians still? Who created? Yes. You said who created them? Yes. You're talking about the reptilians. Yes. The right. You've got God. And God, in order to learn, needed things to learn from.
Right.
So God decided to create a load of archangels who apparently are not connected to humanity in any way, shape, or form. We can't imagine these beings, but they created everything that we see, including a large number of different types of what we call humans, some of which survive and some of which don't survive. I mean, we got the tall whites, for instance. They're another race of humans. And there are various others that live underground that I don't know very much about. And I certainly don't know their names. The tall whites, by the way, they don't call themselves tall whites. I'm not even sure the reptilians call themselves reptilians. I don't know. We call them that, but what they call themselves, I don't know. But yes, they are part of humanity and are closely related to us. Bigfoot is another one.
Right.
Bigfoot,
Yes.
believe it or not, is a close relative of humanity, and
Right.
is another experiment done by these archangels to create life forces to see who could survive. And that's how life was created. The different animals were created, and us humans were created, dumped down around the world and left to get on with it, to see who could survive. If a group died away, they died away. But those that survived were helped eventually to advance and so on, just as we are helped. And I suppose the reptilians have probably got people that help them, or I don't know too much about them other than what I've told you, but certainly the reptilians are basically human and not reptilian at all. They're not lizards at all. They're humans, and are closely related to us. And as it says, could actually interbreed with us if they wanted to, but they are very proud and aloof, and that doesn't interest them.
Well, I mean, it's also true in our biology, Bob. You know, again, Jeff wrote this in his book, but, you know, in our biology, scientists know that we have a reptilian part of our brain, and we also have a mammalian type of our brain. So that's the two divergence right there, the reptilian and the human.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that may be part of the way the archangels set everything up in the first place, creating different aspects of our brain that we call reptilian or mammalian, but to see how it would help us develop. And the reptilians went one way and we've gone another.
Absolutely. Bob, do you have time for another question?
Sure, I can stay here all day.
Please dive into another question then if you're ready.
Right,
Jeff, are you falling asleep?
Not at all, but I just want to be respectful of Bob's time.
Absolutely. I'm just kidding. So I think the next question, Bob, is number 6, and it might be a very powerful question.
All right, let's get the powerful. Lucifer.
Yeah.
Lucifer. Wow. As if we haven't done enough yet.
Actually, you might be disappointed with the answer because the answer is quite simple.
Good.
The devil, Lucifer, Satan, Old Nick, call him what you will, only exists as a thought form in the etheric. But religions under the influence of Archons invented the devil in order to frighten people and tie them to their religion. When people hold black masses, they draw negative forces to them. These might be demons, Archons, reptilians, or any negative entities in the etheric that would enjoy negativity. Equally, the people involved with these evil acts are also acting on their own behalf. That's what I was saying earlier, that people have got free will to do what they want. And if they want to do evil on their own without being influenced, there's nothing to stop them. Either way, they get no benefit from their evil acts. Negativity is a destructive force and thus can give no positive benefit to the participants. Only by doing good can people advance. Negative acts cause destruction. So those involved in those acts get no advantage and eventually have to go to hell to pay for their crimes. So what they're saying there is these people that hold these dreadful black masses and kill little babies and children and drink their blood and all that sort of thing, it gives them no advantage. They might think that they're going to get some help, but they don't, because it's negative, and negative never gives any advantage. And second, when they go to heaven after, and they have their life review, they have to go to hell at the end of their incarnation. They have to go to hell to pay for the crimes that they've committed. So they get a double whammy on it.
So, Bob, the Luciferian religion, which it's very open and very, honestly, openly admitted by people in Hollywood, people in, very many political structures. It's been in many texts. It's been, analyzed over centuries. So what are they worshiping then? They're worshiping a thought form of negativity, or is it really just an archon illusion?
either. It depends what you call it. Yes, they're developing, they're worshipping just a concept. That's all. They visualize something we call the devil, and he's been drawn complete with all his horns and the goat creature and all that. But it's not actually real. But you must understand that thoughts are very, very powerful things. And if you get large numbers of people who regularly concentrate on projecting a thought about something, it gives it a form of life in the etheric realm that can actually influence people and act almost as if it is alive. But it isn't alive, it's just a thought. And anybody that doesn't want to believe that that devil exists and refuses to believe it can dismiss it. And for him, it no longer exists because it's not real.
Wow. So then, Bob, so let me ask you this then. This is fascinating, by the way. So then the Archons, if they've been the true, and I know the Anunnaki are somewhat involved too, but if the Anunnaki and the Archons, to classify them over the last millennia, who knows how far back it goes, whether we can even understand it or not, have been the true dark astral manipulating forces, are they then also the same beings responsible for all the wars and deaths that the religions caused, like the Inquisition and, you know, all the things that have happened? Is that them then that we would understand it as?
I think to a large extent, yes. Don't forget, and I'm sorry to keep repeating it, but people have free will. People are capable of inventing or doing good or bad on their own. They don't need to be influenced in order to do something good or something bad. But I think it's fair to say that all these dreadful acts, particularly the religious ones like the Inquisition and so on,
Dark Ages.
are Archon influenced.
Right.
Either directly or through a long chain of influence going back over time.
So were the Anunnaki and the Archons at various points working together or in concert with one another before?
Apparently not. They've always been at war with each other. But then again, that is the nature of negative beings, isn't it? Good people often form friendships and will work together. But negative things tend to be the opposite of that and thus cause war between them, dissension.
So Bob and Jeff, this is for Jeff. Jeff, do you know how profound what Bob just said and how much I feel, how enlightened I feel for Robert Stanley? Because Robert Stanley said that the Archons were taken over, the Anunnaki were taken over by the Archons.
I think that's true. Well, no, it's not exactly true. They've been pushed into a corner by the Archons. The Anunnaki have been pushed off the stage by the Archons.
Wow.
I believe it. That's
what I was told. You see, you must understand that I'm just a secretary. I'm told stuff and I write it down of my own. If it was
the
just
same job, Bob, for maybe
just sheets of paper. Yeah, the only information.
That's my secretary. That's correct.
Let me ask Bob. Let me ask a question of you, if I can. Have you had an answer from the Great White Brotherhood on this? And if you care to share it, please do. If not, I understand. Have the Great White Brotherhood shared with you what hell is?
Yeah, good question.
I've visited hell many times. It's right. Let me explain. We are all vibrations. Our physical body and our spiritual aspect is just vibrations. Now, when we die and we go, our physical body rots or gets burned or whatever, our spirit and the essential part of us, all our thoughts, our ideas, our hopes, who we truly are, goes off to the default zone of heaven, which is called Summerland. Now, I want you to try and imagine that hell is actually part of the heaven sphere, part of the higher fourth, let's call it, okay? Now, let's say in the middle is the default zone, which is called Summerland. And when you visit there, it's like a huge park. It's beautiful. And you can have houses if you want, but you don't need, because you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't visit the bathroom, you don't need anything. But it's all beautiful parkland, grass, lakes, trees.
Bob, are there marital relations up there?
Not in the sense of physical sex as you would know it, but certainly if there's love, there can never be a separation. If you love your wife, or your wife loves you, or even if you're not married, marriage is nothing to, marriage is just a ring on the finger. It's love that is the basis of what people call marriage. And in heaven, if there's love between two people, they will always be together. If there's no love, you won't see the people. People that you don't like are in a different part of Summerland. Now, from there, you have your life review. And your life review, in fact, you visit the Akashic record where every aspect of every moment of your life is contained. And you can see it as a great lump. So you can see it all in a second, as a download of a lump of information. But you can understand it, and you can see all the good that you did and all the bad that you did. Now, all the good that you did causes you to vibrate. Perhaps I'm saying this a bit wrongly, because I'm not really expressing myself very well here.
It's powerful, Bob.
You by the law of mutual attraction, you are drawn to the average of what you are. So if you're basically a good person, you will either stay in Summerland or go off to a slightly higher area of heaven, a more sunny, brighter, more beautiful place. But if you're basically not a very nice person, you will be drawn to a part of hell that is of the same vibration as you.
Whoa.
There has to be a synchronicity. Okay, so there's endless variants of hell, endless places, and according to how you are, the law of mutual attraction draws you to a part of that hell. If you're not a very nice person, you go to a certain part of hell. If you're a really nasty person, you go to a deeper, and it's not hot. There's none of this burning hell and all that. It gets colder and darker and damp and miserable, and it's really horrible down there. Now, I will just say one more thing. It is just possible, it's very rare, but it is just possible that people can go so low that they lose any sense of being a human. And at that point, their life force is snuffed out and they disappear.
Okay, so Bob, that's what you mean.
Powerful.
Hold on. I don't mean to cut you off, but this is profound. So that's what you mean when people stop having the ability to incarnate again because their soul energy eventually dissipates. Is that correct?
Right. Now, I could have read you their answer because I'm speaking for myself and I shouldn't really do that. But incarnation, the Great White Brotherhood state that it is possible to reincarnate, but it has never happened as far as they are aware. They have never, ever known anybody reincarnate. You come here just the once.
Wow.
Then you, in a way, reincarnate into heaven. And as you progress through spirituality, you sort of keep reincarnating into higher and higher and higher dimensions of heaven, or reincarnate into lower and lower and lower versions of life. But you only ever come here once. And I'm going to repeat that once more, because I get so many people say, yeah, reincarnation, because everybody, but it's just collective wisdom, collective knowledge, collective idea. It never actually happens. I'm sorry to get a bit excited because it rather annoys me that people can't see that you just come here once. And all this idea of people coming back over and over and over again is just nonsense. Now, people say, oh, yes, I've been regressed and I've seen myself. where I was hundreds of years ago or thousands of years, and they're nearly always, if it's a lady, she was a Vestal Virgin and all the rest of, and if it's a man, he was Caesar's bodyguard, or what they're doing is entering the Akashic record, and they just link with something that pops out at them, and it's got nothing to do with them. Or they're making it up themselves, or it's just pure imagination. But reincarnation in a physical sense never happens. The Great White Brotherhood mentioned it because it's like a number of things. Like that, I could jump to the moon. Okay, it's a possibility. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to jump to the moon, but you can't sort of altogether discount it, if you know what I mean. So they said that reincarnation is a possibility, but it has never been known to happen.
Somewhere my friend Wayne Steiger is saying, I told y'all. And, I always wondered, Bob, how come no one was ever the rubbish collector in
right.
ancient Egypt?
when you think about it sensibly, of all the people that have lived over hundreds of thousands of years, the majority of them were poor peasants or downtrodden people, as you say, rubbish collectors, people that emptied other people's toilets. And no, but when people say they reincarnate, they were always someone highfalutin. They were an Egyptian high priest or something, always something like that. And I'm sorry to say, it's just nonsense.
Wow, that's fantastic, Bob. It really is. Just amazing stuff. Do we have time for another question?
I've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if we're running out of time, do you want us to talk about diet, food, meat,
for sure,
and all that?
Yeah,
because I know you mentioned that a little while ago, didn't you?
Well, I think there's only one other one that would be, if you want. I know you say you don't speak about individual, but we asked about Donald Trump and if he's a representative of the good. Is that something you can answer?
They will not talk about individuals. Now, what number have you? Oh, here we are. I've got it. Question number 8. This is their answer. Life is moving into a time of positivity. So the people being placed into positions of power tend to be more positive than their predecessors. Over time, all the negative people in all areas of life, all areas of influence will be removed from office, but we are not there yet. However, we are moving in the right direction. More than that, we do not wish to say. So they will never answer a question about an individual because it's not right to judge people. But
moving into the positive time, if it's that's question number 10, an end of the age type of scenario, or are they open to telling us like how close we are, or is time not really fluid, meaning it's not linear realistically at anything?
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because you're talking about ascension, basically.
Yes.
The answer is quite simple. The whole of our multiverse is constantly swinging from positivity into negativity and back again. Yes. Now, this swing of the pendulum back and forth takes a vast amount of time. I think the swing in any one direction takes over 300,000 years. So it's like 150,000 years that way, 150,000 back, 150,000 years that way, 150,000 years back. And it just so happens that with effect from 2012, roughly, we were at the 6 o'clock point, the bottom of the pendulum, and we're now swinging into positivity, okay? We liken it to the galaxy's biological clock. Just as some birds and animals are affected by their biological clocks to do certain things at certain times under the influence of their DNA, the famous DNA, as all is one, the galaxy has DNA, and this causes it to do certain things at certain times. It just so happens that we are moving into a long period of positivity. And this is where it gets interesting. But only about 50% of the world's population will accept this influx of positivity.
Wow.
So only about 50% will rise in spirituality. But no one will be going anywhere physically. This change is a spiritual one. Some will become better people and some will remain as they are. For those who do not change, their incarnations will end and their places will be taken by better people incarnating. Eventually, all people incarnate will be at the same level as those good people in heaven, and thus will be able to communicate with those in heaven. In other words, when our vibration here on earth is at the same frequency as many people in heaven, certainly those in Summerland, will be able to communicate telepathically backwards and forwards. So when somebody in your family dies or whatever, a loved one dies, they won't be lost to you. You'll be able to say, "Are you all right, Gladys? Yeah, I've arrived in Summerland." You get the idea, okay? Wars will end. Killing of animals will end. Carnivorous animals will be fed manufactured food, so will not need to hunt to survive. So animals will lose their fear of each other and of man. We will all live in peace together. Even planet Earth will alter and stones will start to shine with purity. Imagine everywhere shining as if the stones were crystal. This is the destiny facing us. But we could call this the end of an age, and it is. It is the end of the negative age and the beginning of a positive age. It has nothing to do with the precession of the planets called the age of Pisces or Aquarius, etc. It's a spiritual change that's happening.
So, Bob, where does the, all this is incredible, but and my mind's blown. But so where does the tarot cards, you just said it, the age of Pisces, what's that called? My brain's melting.
Astrology.
Astrology. Where does astrology come? Is it made up? Is it from negative forces? Is it from the Archons? Is there any relevance to it?
I think it's a difficult question to answer, not because I can't answer it, but because it would take so long.
Right.
There are 12 different etheric planets that have got the names of the signs of the zodiac. Right. We call them Aquarius, Pisces, Capricorn, I don't know, all the way around. But they're actually, even though there are parts of the galaxy that people have chosen and given those names to, in reality, they are etheric planets, and they're part of how we make our personality happen as we come down from the heavenly spheres before incarnating. I say it's quite complicated, and what people are doing with all these tarot cards, etc., are kind of translating into earthly senses these different aspects of personality and so on. And don't forget that as all is one, so the planet Earth has a personality, the galaxy has a personality, and so on. So it's actually quite a difficult question to answer in a few words. But astrology, I would not say is false at all. I think a good astrologer can get quite accurate information, especially about people, because they're following the aspects of someone's personality and so on.
Yeah, Heidi, who we mentioned earlier, is quite accurate, Bob.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. These people are quite amazing. They do a very good job, but it's not just because there happens to be planets in the night sky. It's because the personality influences that are behind all that. That's what astrologers are really picking up on.
So, Bob, I have to ask the question. We're moving into the positive age. We don't have a real timeline. They're obviously probably not. They're reluctant to provide a timeline. Are we looking at, I have to ask this question. I'm a very positive person, but are we looking at some sort of calamity to the earth before we move into the positive times, meaning like financial collapse, nuclear war, some form of an extinction level event? Is that coming or foreshadowed at all?
There will be no, I can answer some of these questions. There will be no extermination level event. That is not going to happen. It's not on the cards at all.
I agree so much.
What did you mention other than that?
Financial collapse, like the currency collapse.
That I can't answer. And you mentioned a third one. Can you remember what it was?
Just a global calamity where, things change.
No. There's still going to be wars. And don't forget that the evil ones, especially the Archons, are busy pushing negativity to try and stop this ascension thing. But as the Great White Brotherhood said, they call it a biological clock. And just as an animal feels the desire to do something at a certain time, swallows, I don't know if you have them in America, but here in France, we get swallows arriving in the spring from Africa where they pass the winter. And then at a certain moment, they go off again and so on. And that's the biological clock effect. And the planet is going through that, and nothing will stop it going into positivity. Now, I wanted to mention, they said stones will start to shine.
That's beautiful.
If you dig down in certain caves and things, you can find beautiful crystals and so on. They apparently are the remnants of what was on the surface the last time planet Earth was in that positive mode.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
The horrible grey dark stones that we've got now will gradually be transformed as their vibration rises. They will transform into crystal-looking things, crystalline things, and as the planet Earth itself rises more and more and more, so these things will shine with greater intensity.
So what does that mean for people? Because my daughter and my wife are very big into crystals. Is there something that people can do right now with crystals to harness their energy or to put them around their homes or any of that?
The Great White Brotherhood suggests that you have nothing to do with crystals because many of them contain energetic forces that we know very little about. So some of these energies can be harmful to people. So it's what can I say? It's like just grabbing hold of a load of bacteria and putting it in your house. The bacteria might be harmless, but it might be harmful. You don't know. And crystals are very much the same. When you buy crystals and put them in your house, you don't know what effect they're actually having on you. The salesperson will say, yes, this one brings love, this one brings beauty, this one brings health and all that, but they don't actually know. And some of these crystals are very powerful. They're not meant to be dangerous in themselves, but the rays that they give off, if you don't know what you're doing with them, can be harmful to people. The Atlanteans used crystals a lot, but they knew what they were doing with them, so they only used crystals to produce the energetic forces that they required. They didn't have them as a beauty thing in their house.
So, Bob,
can we cleanse them? Can we cleanse them and then put our own intention in them?
No, you can't. You know the little crystals that you have that make your watch work?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? You can pray over that as much as you want, but you won't stop it vibrating. If you were to take that crystal out of your watch, put it on the table and pray over it for 10 minutes, then put it back in your watch, it will still make your watch work. It will still be vibrating because it's a crystal. Crystals are always vibrating at a certain frequency, which causes a certain effect. Some of them are harmless, some might be beneficial, but some might be nocive to us humans, and we don't know. So the advice the Great White Brotherhood give is not to have crystals at all. I'm sorry to say that.
I'm glad you're telling me that. Should that mean then that I should have my daughter and my wife just remove the crystals from our home? I mean, our home is very beautiful.
It can only be your or their choice. My wife and I used to have quite a collection of crystals, But when we were told that, some we buried and some we gave away.
Thank you. She said it.
Wow.
Well,
anyway,
I mean,
we got rid of our crystals.
Okay, that makes
I
a lot
don't
of
have
sense.
many, but I'm about to have less. I'll just say
Yes, yes, for sure.
Once again, it's up to you. I'm giving you this information. What you do with it is your choice.
Well, it makes sense though, Bob.
It's so scary. It is not information that a lot of people are going to take with pleasure and with joy. But guess what, folks? Sometimes the old saying, the truth hurts. And do you want to, there's an old saying that one of my sales managers used to tell me, you can feed your ego or you can feed your family. You can feed your ego or you can or you can cleanse your life and give yourself the best chance and cleanse yourself from problems and potential difficulties.
And minimize the risk. But Bob, you said something that opened up a can of worms for me in a good way, because you mentioned Atlantis and the Atlanteans. And I've read a lot about the Atlanteans, and very, very, as much as it's possible. I read, Plato's The Critias and whatever has been out there, the Emerald Tablets. I'm very familiar with that. Would you say then that where we're going in this, realm of humans as we move into this age of, enlightenment or whatever we get as we go into the age of positivity, is that the ascension path to become more like the Atlanteans before they fell?
I'm not sure that the Atlanteans were quite as positive as people make out. Already, you have to understand that the Atlanteans were not all stuck on one little island somewhere.
Right.
Just like any major country, you take your country, America, for instance, you have interests all over the world. You have American people all over the world. You have factories that are American owned, but all over the world, and on and on and on. And the Atlanteans were exactly the same. They did have an island, their home base, if you like, but they had interests and people all over the world. And most of them just got on with their life and lived as best they could. Some were rich, some were poor, but they were not this wonderful spiritual race. They were just people that lived. It's a bit difficult to explain, because you have to compare them to the life that you see around you now. That's how you're living. And the
would you say they were more advanced? Would you say they were more advanced technologically than we are now, or was it similar?
Yeah, yes, they were, because they didn't have governments and secret society, secret organizations holding them back, hiding technology. Right. So they I believe they had 0-point energy and all that sort of thing, which helped them a great deal. So they were definitely more advanced, but we would be more advanced if we didn't have the greedy people holding us back to keep us burning fossil fuels all the time.
Right. So would you say then, because again, and I know you already said the Emerald Tablets has been truth with error, but would you say the Emerald Tablets was somewhat right? Because in the Emerald Tablets, it very clearly states that the reason Atlantis fell was because the Archons came in. They called it the Dark Brotherhood. That was the name. And that's why it fell. Is that the truth? Did they sink themselves? Was there an ELE?
No, not. Yes, there was, but it was nothing to do with the Archons. It was to do with what's the opposite force to the Atlanteans?
No. Oh, no, the Lemurians?
Yeah, let's call them that. Anyway, they had a setup not very far from Australia. And right now, imagine Yellowstone Park, okay? You know that all the hot water geysers.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
Right. Where they lived, they had a very similar system, that there was a lot of hot water geysers there, and they drilled into them in order to trap the hot water to provide them with whatever benefits it gave them. And when they were doing that, I mean, over a period of time, all of a sudden, some great big comet thing came in and crashed, and it just happened to hit the point where all these geezers were. Now you imagine a great big comet hitting Yellowstone Park.
Right. Boom.
Right. It caused an enormous explosion that destroyed them and destroyed Atlantis also. Well, you could call it an extinction level event, and I think it certainly was. Now, when that happened, I'm not sure. I don't know the dates of it, but it was quite a long time ago.
Amazing. So the Lemurian, okay, so I guess I can ask this question. I know the Great White Brotherhood knows this answer. So, Helena Blavatsky, in the end of the 19th century, 20th century, wrote about the root races, and she wrote about the Lemurians, and she wrote about the Atlanteans, and she wrote about even races before that. You've already alluded to, and I know the Great White Brotherhood in some of their books has talked a little bit about this. Was what she was saying legitimate, or was she just making stuff up?
All I'm going to do is read to you what they told me, because I remember you saying a week or two ago that you were going to find, you were going to ask about the Theosophical Society.
Yep.
So I asked the Great White Brotherhood about it. Now, basically, not exclusively, but basically it was set up by Madame Blavatsky, whose real name actually was Petrovna von Hahn. Anyway, doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to read the objects. Now, the Great White Brotherhood worked with, this was the question that you originally asked, did the Great White Brotherhood work with the Theosophical Society? I don't know if you remember discussing that between you.
Yes,
I do. Yes,
I do.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the answer is yes. The Great White Brotherhood did work with the Theosophical Society, and the aims and objectives of the Theosophical Society are to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. That's one. Two, to encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science. Three, to investigate unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. Now, based on that, and based on the work done by Madame Blavatsky and a gentleman called Charles Ledbetter, the Great White Brotherhood worked with the Theosophical Society. Now, I'm going to read exactly what the Great White Brotherhood gave me. The Great White Brotherhood merged with Madame Blavatsky and what became the Theosophical Society soon after it became clear that she had the correct ideas, the money, and the personality to found the society correctly. And when they talk about money, they're not talking about people growing rich on the thing. They're talking about having the money to set the thing up.
Right.
right.
However, the Great White Brotherhood became increasingly concerned about all the dissension as other personalities became involved in the direction. The Great White Brotherhood finally withdrew when the principal actors no longer were involved, and it started to turn into the commercial organization that it has become.
Right.
However, we wish to say that the Theosophical Society did groundbreaking work in the early days thanks to the dedication and perseverance of its founders. They have helped many people, and their publications remain as a testimony to their spiritual advancement and psychic skills perfected after much hard work. Such effort to hone these skills latent in all people was rare then and even rarer today. So the early teachings of the Theosophical Society remain as a landmark in esoteric research. And that's all they said.
Beautiful.
Now, they didn't actually answer the question that you were asking about the emerald tablets and all the rest, but I can only read you what they told me.
Well, it's interesting because the Theosophical Society became the Golden Dawn, and then that became Aleister Crowley and that whole offshoot. And it would be interesting. It would be interesting to get their answer. We don't have to do that on this show, but maybe the next time we bring you back, if Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons and all of those people were in any way positive, because my perception is that they became influenced by Archons.
Crowley and who? Who did you mention the second person?
Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley. I would be interested. My perception is that they became influenced by the Archons because they ended up founding Dianetics. They ended up a lot of stuff.
Be clear. What is your question? What do you want me to ask them?
I want you to ask them if Dianetics, which really became, right, Jeff, became their founding religion, which is now massively influencing Hollywood.
What did you call it? Dianetics? What?
Yes. So Dianetics is the religion of L. Ron Hubbard. They're Scientologists. It's the same thing.
Ah, okay.
If that was influenced by the Archons, because the Golden Dawn was the influence of Aleister Crowley, and that kind of left as an offshoot from the Theosophical Society. Again, from the history books.
Okay, I'll ask. I'm just making a note of what you want me to ask them. I won't ask them now because if it's a several-page answer, I'm scripted away.
Bob, have you ever received any communication from the Great White Brotherhood as to whether they have a feeling or do not have a feeling over which astrological system is to be preferred, the Western or the Vedic?
I've never spoken to them about that. And I shouldn't speak for them as I'm only like a worker, but I would imagine that they would say that you can get from either one what you want from it. If you decide to take the positive aspects of any one of these philosophies, you can do that. But if you believe every chapter and verse of the thing, you might be a bit lost. But if you want me to ask them, I will.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. That's great.
What we're talking about, the Western and Eastern, what would you call them, really?
Astrology.
Yeah, the Western and Eastern versions of astrology, which would be the Vedic, which would be the Eastern, and then the Western would be just the Western.
Absolutely.
But Bob, one other question, you can write that down, but one other question that's relevant to tonight, because obviously we've discussed all of the dark forces that have influenced us and influenced humans. Who are the light forces? Obviously, the Great White Brotherhood as incarnated humans who are now in the etheric realms or wherever they are, whatever dimension they're on. But are there other like astral beings, aliens, golden, light being archangels? Like, who are the golden beings of light influencing humanity as well?
Right. Now, we can think this out together.
Please.
Our system, its modus operandi is love. Do you remember us talking about that?
Yes.
So, to put that into implementation, there must be a large number of beings that are somewhere in the astral, let's say, that are positive, that are looking to make love work. They're coming together, being nice. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not expressing it very well.
Absolutely.
Now, so what I do know is there are a number of different groups similar to the Great White Brotherhood. Possibly the Great White Brotherhood is the most well known, but I understand that there are other groups, and equally there are a large number of angels and archangels who are actively working to help us. And of course, there are a large number of ordinary people that are in the heavenly spheres, people like you and I will be one day when we die and we go off there. We don't have to become part of the Great White Brotherhood, but we can be sympathetic to people that are going through a horrible incarnation down here.
Wow.
And can be sending their positive thoughts. Now, equally, it's possible for any human, if he so chooses, to become an archangel himself. he can progress to the point where he passes a final sort of test, if you like, and he becomes an archangel. Now, there are also archangels that are non-human, and they also are positive by and large. I must also say that there are an equal and opposite number of negative beings, because everything has to be in balance all the time. But yes, there are a large number of positive beings out there that are helping us. And you also have to remember that we are now moving into this positive phase of our existence, which is helping. On the moon, there is a machine that dumbs us down. I don't know if you know about it, on the far side.
Yes.
Please talk about that.
Well, I can't say much about it, except that its power has been turned down. So that will enable us to become not necessarily more spiritual, but have our psychic abilities come to us more easily.
So, Bob, was that machine put there by the Archons?
It was put there by people so long ago that the Akashic record in our system has no trace of it, because it's a thing. The moon is a natural body, but it's been artificially manipulated, and it's towed all round the galaxy as it's required. And
that so resonates.
Right.
Some I don't know, tens of thousands of years ago, it was towed into our close to our planet, and it's got a great big magnet in it, so to speak, that holds one part of it always facing the Earth, because on the other side there's quite a lot going on. Amongst the various things is this so-called dumbing down machine, which a year or so ago was turned down. So that's helping with the ascension process.
That makes sense. That's why people are becoming more conscious and more aware and more loving, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this will go on and on and on. And you'll find that evil people, evil politicians and so on will more and more be found out. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's gradually happening. The pedophiles or whatever you call them are being found out. And other people that have been working all sorts of scams are gradually being found out. And this will happen more and more. And it's this effect of the biological clock swing of us moving into positivity.
Bob, so amazing. So I can't let this. So first off, I will say this. This is the greatest show ever on the internet. By far the best production video that's ever been on YouTube. And if that's not borne out by the next 6 months to a year, I would be flabbergasted. But there's two questions, and I know you already hinted at them. And I know, Jeff, it's late there. And I know, Bob, we are so appreciative and grateful for you waking up so early. But I definitely want these questions to answer just to make
Jay, let's wrap this up with this. I want to be very appreciative of Bob's time. And
no, I know. There's just two more questions, and then we'll bring him back. But I know he wanted to answer them anyway. And that was obviously the vegan question of whether it's harmful to eat meat. And then the last one, and I have to just say it now, and you can answer it, Bob, is this current existence that we are in right now simulated? Meaning, are we in a construct like a matrix or a simulated reality? So I'll let you answer both questions, and we'll wrap it up.
And Bob, let me just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here with us. And we're not going to keep you after these two questions anymore, I promise.
Hold on. You sure you want me to answer them? Because they're going to take a long time. These are big questions. Well, the Matrix one is not. But hang on. There was some. Oh, yeah. Right. I'll answer the Matrix one first, because it's the shortest. And then
perfect.
That was number 20, by the way, on your list of questions, correct. I believe.
Last question, yep.
Right. Now, the question one must ask is, what is reality? Okay. Now, because I believe in your question, you said something about, can we wake up into a reality? Are we living in a simulated reality? Okay. Why don't more humans realize this is all a dream, one that they can wake up from at any point? Okay, that was your question. Now, here's your answer. If you want to know the truth, it is this. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
There is nothing. You do not exist in any form.
Exactly.
Planet Earth does not exist. The galaxy does not exist. All that exists is God.
Yes.
And God is an invisible, unknowable force living in an area where there is absolutely nothing. As you and everything else is God, you and everything else is an invisible, unknowable force living in a nowhere land. Okay?
Amazing.
Does that help? The question mark. That's what they said here. Does that help? Is that the reality you want to wake up to? We would suggest that the answer is no. So it is better to live in this created form of reality. Now, the question that might have been asked is, do we want to live in this Archon-controlled version of reality? And I think, in all honesty, that would be the better question, because we don't want to wake up where we're nothing, living nowhere. We got to be somewhere. Live. So, but do we want to still stay in this mess that we're all in? So once again, we would suggest that the answer would be no. But the trouble is waking people up to the fact that we can live in another reality. We and others have stated that we create the reality in which we live. We can change that reality by a spiritual act or acts. The simple acts of 1, prayer, thanking God for all his blessings. 2, meditation, trying to blank the mind. 3, helping all life when appropriate. These 3 acts will in time draw a different future to you. That is waking up from the matrix. Ascension, which is happening now, will assist. Oh, and then it goes on to say what we've already talked about. The dumbing down machine on the far side of the moon has reduced its intensity. Thus, humanity is poised to assume its rightful place as sons and daughters of God and not slaves of the Archons. Each and every person has the opportunity to rise in spirituality and take control of his life. It is up to all people to assume the responsibility of rising towards God. No third party can do it for you. You must do this yourself, but it is not difficult.
Wow, that is so amazing. So just quickly on the spiritual component of eating animal flesh.
Well, I've got a long answer. I don't know if you've got the time. I've got the time.
I have the time. Jeff can hang up. No, I'm just kidding. He'll
How long? Yes, let's answer it. Let's answer it. But Bob, I really want to be cognizant and respectful of your time, because I want you to come back. I want you to think we wore you out.
No, I'm fine. And I will come back if you want me, with pleasure.
Well, let's answer this question about food and eating, and we will wrap it up with this.
Okay, but I warn you, it's because it's broken into bits.
Please read it. It's very relevant.
If you're willing to read it, please do so.
I am more than willing. The consumption of meat is a fraught question. Do you know what fraught means? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry to treat you like little kids. I don't mean to.
You're talking to mostly Americans, so we understand.
Well, yeah, we won't go down that road.
No.
It can almost be compared to religious discussions. And by that, they mean as soon as you start to speak to religious people, the hairs on the back of their neck stand up and you get into a fight. But it was considered until quite recently that man could not survive without meat. Certainly, vitamin B12 is a problem and has been used as an argument proving that meat consumption is both necessary and natural to man. In fact, the B12 problem is a hangover from when man was in the caveman stages and relied on killing animals to feed his family and himself, plants being somewhat unknown about. However, as man rises in ascension, so his body will adapt, and eventually this last vestige of a bygone age will disappear, and man will no longer require vitamin B12. We consider that spirituality, its obtaining, requires certain sacrifices, and one of them is to not kill God's creatures who are also close cousins of humanity.
Wow.
Do you remember us talking about, or I think in that book about DNA, it said that some animals are so close in DNA to us humans that we're almost the same being. Anyway, there are a number of
10 chromosomes in some cases.
Yeah, okay. There are a number of reasons for not eating meat, all of which have been explained over and again, but we will repeat a few once again. 1, thou shalt not kill. This implies never being involved in any activity that involves negative actions. Killing animals is obviously a negative action. 2, animal products are harmful to humans who are not designed to digest such matter. 3, uric acid is very harmful to humans. 4, the animalistic auras that animals have are in opposition to any auric influence that humans require. The result is seen around us in aggressivity and or fear. Humans require peace and love, not aggressivity or fear. 5, when a person's incarnation finishes and that person goes to heaven, the animalistic auras cling to him, his spiritual body. The result is that by the law of mutual attraction, he is drawn to a level that corresponds to the spiritual level he has obtained. So, no matter how holy a person thinks he is, with animal auras mixed with his own, he is not able to enter the higher realms of light. We might use the example of someone wearing a pure white garment that is covered in mud, thus concealing the white. 6, the last thing that we will mention is hypocrisy. A spiritual person confesses love for all things, because the modus operandi of this planet is love. But how can that person be loving when he is responsible for the production and destruction of God's creatures in the most appalling manner possible to imagine? A truly spiritual person would not only not eat animals, but would advocate for the elimination of all animal exploitation. Okay.
So Bob, do I take it that you and your wife do not eat meat?
No, my wife is totally vegan, and I am more or less vegan. The only thing I do eat is occasionally is a bit of cheese because of the B12 problem. My wife takes B12 liquid. It's a kind of a reddish liquid that's produced synthetically. It doesn't come from any animal.
Right.
Wow.
So the question becomes, and again, I'm a scientist. And I totally,
some would say a mad scientist.
It's totally, it's difficult for me because I do eat meat, and I do support my choice to eat meat because of my scientific inquiry. But I totally empathize with what you're saying, and I have read, a lot of different books that talk about what you say, and I totally respect and empathize what you're saying. But could you ask the Great White Brotherhood if there are some species of humans that have evolved? And I'm not trying to support me eating meat at all. I'd like this question to be answered maybe on the next one. But if there are some species of humans through, evolutionary adaptation or biology over time, they did evolve to have some form of animal protein that allows them to function better, or am I just making stuff up?
You want to know if there are people that must eat meat
Yes,
to
exactly.
be able to operate. Okay,
Yes.
let me just give me a second to write it down, please.
Sure. Because I know, and Jeff knows people too, and Jeff's tried it, and we all know a lot of people, and I have not tried it. I'll be the first to admit it. But I do know people who have gone vegan for a long time, and I mean like years, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and have gone almost essentially mad. They become psychopathic. They become unable to be around other human beings. They destabilize. And so I'd love that question to get answered if there are select forms of us.
Of course, there might be other reasons why the person became bizarre, not necessarily connected to diet, you know. Anyway, I will ask. Now, look, to keep this short, oh, by the way, Jeff will be able to deal with this. I found 3 biblical quotes about not eating meat. The first one is Genesis chapter 9, verse 4, where it mentions, I've given you the seed of the trees and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And then there's Leviticus chapter 17, verse 14, where it talks about not eating things with blood in them and all that sort of stuff. And there's Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23, which talks about very similar things, where it says, you know, you shouldn't eat anything that's got blood in it, basically.
So Bob, with the Archons...
Well, let me just read one of these real quick, Bob and Jay. Okay. Leviticus 17:14. For it is the life of all flesh, the blood of it is the life thereof. Therefore I say unto you, you shall eat no manner of flesh, for the life of all flesh is the blood thereof, and whosoever eats it will be cut off.
Wow.
Or have a certain part of you cut off.
Right.
well, Bob, what made man eat meat? Was it Archon creation?
I honestly don't know, but I think very possibly, because if you go around gathering different herbs and things, you don't know what's going to poison you and what's not. Whereas, you know, if somebody found a mushroom, for example, a primitive caveman found a mushroom and said, oh, I'm going to eat this, man, and ate it, and he died because it was a poisonous mushroom, you'd say to yourself, oh, I'm not going to eat mushroom. But you know, if you kill a rabbit, you're going to eat it, on top of which you can use its fur to create something to keep you warm, you know. So I think that people were naturally drawn, I would imagine, I don't know, people were naturally drawn towards killing animals to eat them, rather than collecting herbs and things that you wouldn't necessarily know about. However,
powerful.
Well, I'm just trying to think for a moment. Now, I will also say that they must have had apples, and depending where they live, oranges and things like that. And right. I'm sure that they ate those as well. But it would have been natural to eat meat.
Yeah.
And so now, yeah, go on.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask you, if you're a meat eater, you know, knowing what you're now telling us, and deep down, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on my perception, I kind of resonate with this. I kind of, through some friends, I kind of feel that this is the right way, the right path deep down. How is a person blocked then when they die from ascending to higher spiritual realms because they have the blood of the meat on them? Is there a way that can be overcome?
Well, be careful with biblical stuff, because it's often explained in a difficult way, or may not be true at all. But so forget the Bible stuff. But the fact of the matter is that if you're involved with the killing, and if you eat meat, even though you didn't kill the animal yourself, you're responsible for its death in a way. So you're involved in the killing process. That's a negative process and reduces your natural vibration. And don't forget that in heaven, the law of mutual attraction works. You're drawn to an area that you're compatible with. Now, the second thing that they mention is that animals have animalistic auras. And if you eat meat, that meat has still got, even when it's cooked and all that, it still has that animalistic aura attached, which clings to you and must drag you down, because a human is supposed to be higher in terms of auric vibration than an animal. And if you're filling yourself with low auric matter, it's reducing your overall frequency, so to speak. May I answer another question here?
Sure, absolutely.
It's to do with killing of animals. Somebody asked me, if everything is illusion, Maya, why should he not eat animals? Because they are not real, they are illusionary.
That's my question, for sure.
Fair question. So I asked the Great White Brotherhood, here is their answer. The answer to this question is that although all is illusion, Maya, I don't know how you pronounce Maya, but
no,
M-A-Y.
It's Maya. It's Maya.
Maya, okay, Maya. Consciousness is real. Right. Consciousness is an invisible concept, but is at the base of life. Life is all that exists and comes from God. So if we work backwards, we have God who creates life. Then connected to life, we have consciousness. Consciousness allows us to make choices. One of the choices that we can make is itself connected to good and bad, love and its opposite. It is not easy to find one word that equates to the opposite of love, but love implies a constructive concept amongst many other things. So we might say that the opposite of love could be destruction. Inbuilt within us in the galaxy that we are attached to is the concept of love, the modus operandi of God that we've mentioned a number of times. Therefore, even though everything is Maya, we have within us this God force that is based on love, a coming together concept. Thus it is that anything that is the opposite to love is repugnant to us. It is the God force that we all have that tells us that killing is not only the opposite of love, but should not happen, because our God force is based on love. So even though nothing is real except consciousness, if we use that consciousness to kill, even in imaginary form, and there they're talking about
wow,
kids
that's powerful.
These games, you know, these games where they're killing things all the time. So let me read that again. So even though nothing is real except consciousness, if we use that consciousness to kill, and I'll skip that bit, we find that it is in opposition to the God force we all have.
So Bob, two questions from this. So if a person has been eating meat their whole life, which Jeff and I pretty much have, and they would switch over to becoming vegan and doing everything right. And one other thing I have to say, and again, this is not an excuse, and I'm sure everyone that's watching right now, which we still have a lot of people.
You keep saying that, Jay. It's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse, but I want to put this out there because
they have all switched off even after all this time.
Yeah, right. Bob, this is so profound, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But here's the thing, and Jeff and I talk about this all the time. It's very expensive in the United States to actually eat a real vegan diet. Why getting the essential amino acid spectrum that you need and eating clean so that you have energy? I mean, it's not easy, right? I mean, they make it simple to consume garbage, GMO foods laced with toxics, impurities, killing animals, blah, 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 on and on it goes. So, to me, it's easier to not eat a vegan diet than it would be to eat a vegan diet. And another thing is, and I was reading someone who's a very high level vegan author about 4 or 5 days ago, and she said that the majority of vegans are actually polluting their bodies, and they're going to have disastrous health consequences by 2025, because they're not eating enough protein or fats, essential fatty acids, because they don't have it in their diet. and they're becoming soft and obviously, you know, mineral. Look at you.
I'm not wasting away.
So, but the reality is she has really good points. So I guess my question is like, is it common sense, or what's the best word? Is it practical is a better word for most people in the world who lack resources to eat a vegan diet? That's the question.
Yeah, I do appreciate what you're saying, because as I mentioned, my wife and I have been as vegan as we possibly can be for many, many, many years. And I'll tell you what happened, if I may, to just break off. But it's part
please.
I was meditating one day, and one of the people that contact me used to be a Catholic monk, a Benedictine monk, many long years ago in the south of England. And he used to talk to me about various things. Anyway,
this is one of the Great White Brotherhood you're talking about,
yes,
correct?
Indeed, yes. And I was sitting meditating, and I was talking to this gentleman, and he said to me, have you considered becoming vegetarian? And by vegetarian, they mean not eating meat in any way, shape, and form, what we would call vegan, really, but they use the word vegetarian for that. And at the time, neither my wife nor my family nor I were. So I said, no, it never crossed my mind, never thought about it. He said, let me give you a little example. He said, imagine you go to your local marketplace, right, an open space with lots of stalls, people selling things, and there's a man with a wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow is full of earth, and growing in the earth is an apple tree with apples hanging from the branches, and attached to the handle of the wheelbarrow is a lamb, okay? And the man stops you and he says, excuse me, sir, are you hungry? And you say, yes, I am, I'm hungry. And he hands you the knife and he says, if you're hungry, take this knife and either cut an apple from the tree or cut a lump off of this living lamb and eat that. He said, what would you do? And I said, well, naturally, I'd cut the apple. I couldn't possibly cut a lump off of a living lamb. So the answer that this monk, Father Ignatius, his name is, he said, in your heart, you're already vegetarian. He said, you should think about becoming it in your life.
Wow.
You know what, Bob? I think that resonates with me. I believe that I am too. And let me just say this. So one of my good friends.
I am too.
The question, could you have taken that knife and cut a lump off of that living lamb and eaten it? No.
So, but Bob, the question still, and let me just say this. One of my good friends who went vegan about 3 months ago is like begging me and saying that, you know, with all of the work I've done and my spirituality, that by stopping animal flesh, that I will become so much more in tune and my downloads will increase and everything will be so much better. And so I believe everything now, especially after you solidifying what he says. I guess my concern and my worry is that I become one of those people that can't handle not eating meat. I guess the only way to find out is to try, right?
Well, what I will say is, if you want to become a non-meat eater, do it very, very slowly. Just reduce eating meat once a week and carry on the other 6 days as you normally would, and then stop meat like twice a week, maybe on a Monday and a Thursday, for instance. Don't eat the meat or whatever, and do it very, very slowly, because if you suddenly do something dramatic, you will harm your body. And
right. Oh, yeah, we understand. How do you get protein, Bob? Where do you get protein from? Like, how do you get it from?
God, there's protein in. Go on the web and have a look at the.
No, I understand that. I'm asking you, like you and your wife, like where do you guys get your protein from? We eat
a great variety of fruit and veg. You'd be surprised the proteins that's in mushrooms, for instance.
Yeah.
And you can eat them raw or you can cook them. There's a surprising number of different vegetables that have got masses of protein.
Yeah, there are.
And you can see from the state of me, I'm hardly lacking in protein and so on. My problem is why I'm so fat is I'm like 18 or 20 hours a day sat in front of a computer or sitting writing books so I hardly ever move. But
you know, I saw a little cartoon, Bob, and I think you'll appreciate this. There was this gorilla, right, sitting there, and this little weasel was sitting on this this tree branch, and this little bitty weaselly thing is saying to the gorilla, and the gorilla's looking at him like, what? The weasel's saying to the gorilla, "Are you sure you're getting enough protein?" Because of course the gorilla doesn't eat meat.
No, quite. That's a good example. And elephants don't eat meat, and a surprising number
Horses
of huge
don't eat meat.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
anyway,
you know, but we're not animals. We're humans.
We are.
And so we all I will say is, if anybody, this applies to the public, that anybody that's listening to us, if they decide to try and give up eating meat, do it very, very slowly over a period of several months.
So, Bob, how fast do you remove the auric effects of animal flesh from the body?
In terms of auric damage.
Once one stops eating meat. If you've been eating meat your whole life, like Jeff and I have, we stop and we do it methodically and precisely and meticulously, like you said. Like, you know, could you give an estimated time frame of like when those fields would dissipate? Would it be under 5 years?
It'd be under 5 minutes, wouldn't it? Because as soon as you stop eating meat, you've no longer got that meat sort of poisoning your auras, shall we say. I don't like to use the word poisoning because that's not very good, but I'm just off the top of my head. As soon as you stop doing something, then the effect of that goes.
Well, at least as long as once the meat that's in your system digests and passes through, then the auric effect of it is gone.
Give it a few, if you want to put a time scale on it, say within a week, I would say that already the negative auric effects of animal consumption, flesh consumption, will have been gone from your system.
Wow.
But I repeat over and over and over again, it must be done very, very slowly. And you must learn what fruit and veg, and nuts and pulses and God knows what to eat to remain healthy. If you don't, you could. Just had a thought. You know, the person who you said went a bit crazy. If you don't have enough vitamin B12, that can happen. It can cause great depression and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So, Exactly.
So you need, one way or another, you need to get B12 in your system. I get it through eating a piece of cheese every now and again. My wife gets it through buying from the chemist shop these little vials of a liquid, a pinky, dark pink, almost red liquid that's made synthetically, so it hasn't got any animal products in it, but replaces the B12. But that's the only essential thing that you must have. But the rest is common sense. Do things very slowly. Make sure you survey your body. Listen to your body. Your body will tell you if you're not getting enough of this or that. So you need to think. Yeah. You need to listen to your body to make sure that you're getting sufficient of everything. And a great varied diet is the secret. Make sure you eat nuts and raisins and figs and dates and
Jay, what is your friend's website where you can get the pea protein and things of that nature? Because we're going to have people trying this. Let
me just say this. So I want to say to everybody who's watching this, there's a lot of people, you know, Bob, you do not know me like in my personal life, like all these other people do, but I'm a very high level sports scientist, and I make a promise to everyone here who's watching and all the people who watch this video that I am literally going to make it my personal mission now to come up with the vegan diet for people who want to do it right and responsibly, and I will make it the best thing that this planet has ever seen. I've literally have just changed my mission in the last hour from listening to Bob, and I am going to do this. So you all have my promise that I'm going to do this. But for now, there is a website called truenutrition.com. and there is a very high-level form of pea protein that anyone can purchase. He does ship international, Bob. They have multiple flavors of it. Pea protein is the only true essential amino acid matrix for all the essential amino acids of all the various quote-unquote vegan protein mixtures. It's not hemp, as most people mistakenly assume. But as Bob said correctly, there are numerous proteins in vegetables, in legumes. There are ways to get your protein, but if you want to get it in like a supplemental / powder form, it definitely is the best version is pea protein.
True Nutrition.
Yes, truenutrition.com.
All right.
Bob,
I'm going to join you on that, Jay.
I don't know what to say other than, Bob, you are amazing. I have so much love and gratitude for you, brother. This has been the most profound night of my entire life. I am completely mind blown. My brain's leaked out all over the back of the floor back here. But I feel like I feel it charged up. You gave me a new.
True. It's all true, but I'm so humble I wouldn't possibly admit it. No, I'm just an ordinary person. Don't put me on a pedestal.
No, I know you are, but we appreciate you downloading what you do from the Great White Brotherhood, and Jeff and I have.
I'm grateful to you all for accepting that I'm getting this information from a sensible source and not just making it all up myself and creating nonsense.
Well, I'll be frank with you, Bob. I don't care where it came from. The information resonates to me as true.
Totally deep. Totally true.
Oh, I'm happy.
Well, Bob, you are a gentleman and a scholar, and there's so few of us left. So I'm so honored to count you among my friends now.
Don't put me on a pedestal because I'm just the secretary that received the information. There's a boss that says, take a letter, Miss Smith. And Miss Smith writes it down. Dear sir, further to my communication of the 4th of January. No, I'm like that. I just write it down. So I take no credit for this at all. I'm just happy to pass the message on. And if it's helpful.
Well, the vegan fasting diet book will be out by the end of February. And I'm not saying that as a joke, but it's already like I'm receiving downloads right now ever since what Bob said. So it is coming. Bob, we are going to have you on the show again. How does like middle of December look?
Anytime I'm here. Anytime
it's going to take that long, Bob, because this show. Okay, so let me just let you know we're going to transfer. We're going to transcribe the show. I already have somebody who's going to go to work on it tonight. As soon as I get the transcription back, we will send it to you. Make sure you read over it. If there's anything mistakenly transcribed, have the Great White Brotherhood look over it too.
You mean in written fashion?
Absolutely. The whole thing is going to be transcribed and sent to you so you can proofread it. And then that way we can put this out in the video where it resides online so that people can read it who don't want to watch the video, and it will always be there for everyone.
What are you talking about? Just a bit about diet or the whole show?
No, everything. The whole video. It's so insanely profound. Your information is incredible, and people deserve to read it.
I can't imagine anybody being able to.
We have technology, Bob. We can do it. We can do it.
Okay.
And Bob, I'll also send you. I know you have a YouTube channel. I'll send you the link to this show.
Yes.
And please feel free to place it on your site if you would like to.
You are very kind. Thank you. Thank you both for allowing me on your show. It's been a great pleasure. And although I feel a bit sort of guilty because you keep saying that I'm sort of special. I'm not special. I don't want to be special. I'm just me passing on information. And if I've helped you, that's my job, and I'm glad I've done it. And I thank you very much indeed. And if you want me to come back, I'll be more than happy to do so.
Oh, we're going to bring you back.
Absolutely.
Listen, while we're busy talking, before we hang up, we've answered a good deal of the 20 questions that you sent me. We didn't answer them all, but will you prepare more questions to ask?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. A similar concept to what we've gone through this evening?
100%.
We definitely will.
100%.
We
I'd
definitely
appreciate getting it a week or two in advance.
Oh, yeah, we'll get it to you way in advance. I'm thinking sometime like right around before the holidays in December. I really believe Bob, I really mean this. I speak from my heart when I say this. I know Jeff agrees with me. This video is going to be watched by a lot of people for a long time.
Wow. Well, I hope so. Once again, if it helps people, that's all that matters to me. That's what we're all here for, to help each other. And if what we've gone through this evening helps people, then by the law of mutual attraction, we are helped.
Yes, all of us. Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. No
Bob,
problem.
it has been an honor and a pleasure. We appreciate you so very much.
I can assure you the pleasure is all mine. I've really enjoyed it this evening. I was a little bit worried whether the equipment would work because of our slow speed internet, but I don't know what it looks like your end, but it seems to be something.
No, everything is perfect. And you know what, Bob? It also, to me, it resonates with the likelihood that everything you said is, again, totally true and resonating, because we have had, and Jeff can echo this, we have had times when we would try to speak in very profound truth before, and we would get interrupted transmissions. We would get stuff, scrambled. Yeah. There would be incoherent, so static and interference. So it seems like, as you said, that we are moving into a more positive time, because it doesn't seem like forces have that power anymore.
Fingers crossed, Dave.
Yes.
And there's no doubt that we're moving into this positive phase, and I can see it. I don't often watch television, but if I switch the news on, I can see the number of people that are being found out doing wrong things that would never have been found out a few years ago. So I can see it's happening. Yep. And I can see, when I look at people, I can see how much more positive people are. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity still, but it's gradually changing.
Absolutely.
And for every one person that changes, it has a snowball effect. And it will go on and on. Nothing will stop this change, because it's like a biological clock. Yeah.
And I am a wild-eyed optimist, but I do believe that this world is changing for the positive. And I believe that someday, as it continues to change, people are going to look back to this as one of those moments of where things really began to change, and it really was a shift in paradigm.
There's no question.
Thank you so much.
Now I'll let you into a little secret. When it was first suggested to me a few weeks ago, when I wrote a little comment thanking you for the show, and Jay, it was, suggested that perhaps I come on your show, and I asked the Great White Brotherhood, and they said, yes, please do that show, because that will be the tipping point that will help the ascension process as far as they are concerned. And I obviously I didn't mention that to you.
Thank you.
But
that's amazing.
I will now, because you've realized it yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that 100%.
This is an important moment, and I'm very glad to have been part of it.
Thank you so much, Bob.
I thank you for the invitation that you gave us so that we could be part of this event.
And we will do this again real soon. We'll contact you, Bob, and we'll make sure we get you everything in plenty of time beforehand, so we can do another, we can do it justice again like we did today.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. You stayed up very late, and I know, Bob, you woke up so early, and my heart's off. My hat is off, and my heart is out to both of you guys.
It's a 6:15 in the morning where I live so I'll have breakfast.
I even got my hair done for the show, so.
Wow. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. We never had less than 600 people here. It's fantastic. It's amazing. We do send you all love and light. Bob, thanks so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing all of you again in the future. Remember, we're the last generation of real humans. This is the last stand. Let's get busy.
And a big thanks to all the people that watch this show or will watch it in the future on YouTube when it comes out. Thank you very much for the invitation. I look forward to speaking to you again in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye. Namaste.